Chapter 408. The rectangular steel object was about 6 meters long and 1.5 meters wide at its widest point. It was abandoned in the corner of the warehouse. If no one opened the door of the warehouse, the steel object that was considered a waste in the eyes of most of the technicians in the research institute would be sealed. However, not long ago, the door of the warehouse that should have been sealed was opened by someone. "Is this what you found?" Ray Minkai's footsteps stopped at the door of the warehouse. His eyes then fell on the steel object that was placed in the center of the warehouse, in the most eye-catching position. At first glance, Ray Minkai saw the exposed skeleton and the messy lines. Then, Ray Minkai's eyes slowly moved, but he saw that at the end of the rectangular steel object, there was a very conspicuous structure similar to a gun stock. And moving down along the structure of the gun stock, he could clearly see the trigger structure. Without a doubt, the moment he saw the structure similar to the gun stock and the trigger, Ray Minkai already understood that this abandoned steel object was probably a firearm that was seriously oversized compared to the AS. However, in addition to these extremely conspicuous features, Ray Minkai was more concerned about the barrel and the ammunition chamber of this giant firearm. Normally, to clearly see the internal structure of a firearm, it must be disassembled one by one in order to explore it. However, the steel object placed in the center of the warehouse was not completed for some reason. No, it should be said that it was abandoned after the basic framework was built and the experimental stage was built. Ray Minkai was able to clearly see the internal structure of the firearm. With this look, Ray Minkai's eyes became dignified. "Royd, do you know the origin of this thing?" Ray Minkai did not immediately reveal the true origin of this firearm, but asked Royd, who was standing next to him. Royd was silent for a moment, then took out something from his pocket, a man-made model made of plastic. That was the beam gun used by Copeland. If Ray Minkai was not mistaken, the origin of this Copeland beam gun should be the beam rifle used by Ancestor 0079. Captain Knight. If I'm not mistaken, this messy pile of parts should be this guy. No, maybe it's a close relative of this guy. Royd held the Copeland beam rifle model in his hand and shook it in front of Ray Minkai. Then, after a wry smile, he sighed. "If it weren't for His Majesty's recommendation that I try to make Copeland and get more ideas for the development of the body, I'm afraid I wouldn't have recognized the true origin of this pile of parts." Royd's sigh made Ray Minkai nod slowly. Since Ray Minkai saw and personally drove the new Roaring Flame Demon sword, he saw similarities from various technical details and even the style of the UC technology tree. This was probably due to Lloyd's exposure to part of the UC Century's body development technology and the influence of the steel plum model that he had personally made. This is a beam rifle. Although it looks a bit tattered now, I'm afraid this is the beam rifle used by Marine Gauda that I once drove. Royd, do you know what this means? Ray Minkai's face gradually became solemn. Although Ray Minkai had various speculations about the technology hidden in this research institute, he did not expect that there would be technology related to the UC world here. Apart from Ray Minkai's side, there was only one person who could cause such an impact. Miss Q. Xia Yufeng. Thinking of this, Ray Minkai's call immediately received a response from Xia Yufeng, one of the twins. "Yes, Sir Knight. Please instruct." Xia Yufeng respectfully walked out of the shadows and slightly bowed to Ray Minkai. Under the guidance of Fianna, who was better than the twins in terms of body piloting technology and personal strength, the twins' current style gradually had a trace of the style of the Empire's Night Order. After this sentence flashed in Ray Minkai's mind, he immediately asked, "When you interrogated the staff of this research institute, did you ask if there was any special person here?" Xia Yufeng was silent for a moment, as if she was recalling the interrogation process at that time. "Yes, Sir Knight. There was indeed a mysterious woman accompanied by the former Mr. AU who stayed in this research institute for a period of time. But strangely, except for the memory of this woman's appearance, No one could recall the name of this woman and what she did here. Only the memory of the mysterious woman's appearance, but no memory of her name and what she did? Ray Minkai was a little surprised, but not surprised. He even had some doubts. I'm afraid that memory manipulation was done. But, if memory manipulation was done, why didn't they erase their memory of coming here? Maybe there wasn't enough time. Royd next to him gave a speculation. Not enough? Ray Minkai asked back. Maybe. This is just my guess. If the other party was using the resources of this research institute to carry out some kind of body development, and was about to or even completed, after suddenly learning the news of the former Mr. Ayu's death. Was it a hasty evacuation? Royd's speculation gave Ray Minkai some ideas. If this speculation was correct, perhaps the answer to why this beam rifle with only a rough framework appeared in this secluded corner of the warehouse could be found. Xia Yufeng, go and check the entry and exit records of the Research Institute. I don't need the entry and exit records of the staff. You just need to investigate the material consumption and supply of the Research Institute. Yes, do it now. Xia Yufeng turned around and left without hesitation. She did not have the slightest reaction to Ray Minkai's unguarded back. Captain Knight, are you trying to deduce what kind of monster this research institute has created through the material consumption and supply situation? Royd only needed to think a little to understand Ray Minkai's intention. And, yes, since the other party can perform memory manipulation, it means that the records of the staff's entry and exit may also be modified. Although there is a suspected flaw left on the way, we still need to speculate the general result from other aspects. Ray Minkai's gaze fell on the unfinished beam rifle. He suddenly had an idea. Royd, are you interested in doing something? Royd raised his eyebrows, his right hand playing with the model of the Templar beam rifle in his hand, and smiled. Why, Captain Knight, are you interested in this unfinished beam rifle? Maybe. But what I'm more concerned about is, will there be anything hidden in this beam rifle? Lei Minkai glanced at Royd's eager face and continued, I'm not sure if you're going to give it a try. Even if there is nothing hidden, I think we should make use of this beam rifle. After all, if it stays here, the technicians of the Research Institute may not be able to complete it, and they may not have the technology. Royd heard this and nodded repeatedly. Indeed. When cracking the database of the Research Institute, I found that although the technology here made my eyes light up, overall, there are still some gaps. That's it. I'll have someone send this guy back to Avalon later. Royd smiled and added, Don't worry. Of course. Before that, we have to disassemble this guy, and then after strict testing, we can send it back to Avalon. And that's it. Royd, I'll leave everything to you. After making the final decision, Ray Minkai was ready to leave. Ray Minkai did not plan to stay in the Research Institute any longer. This time, he came because of the appearance of the beam rifle. All right, Royd. In the next few days, Mira needs to go back to school with me. I'll leave the technology here to you as well. Really? Is it because she missed classes for a long time? That's tough. In my opinion, Miss Myra's knowledge is far beyond the level of high school students in this world. If she goes back to school like this, I'm afraid she won't be able to learn anything. Royd nodded and gave his opinion. Although Royd had the help of his right-hand man in terms of skills, who would refuse to have another helper of similar ability level? It's not about academics, Royd. This is a necessary way for Mira to recover from her mental trauma as soon as possible. Although Mira was now fully invested in the field of body development technology, Lei Minkai still felt that it was necessary for Mira to have a memory of her high school days that wouldn't be a blank slate. Really? Then there's no other way. It seems that I have to work overtime. It's rare that I don't hear Royd's nagging. I didn't expect such a rare leisure time to pass like this. Why would Sahil continue to nag at Royd? This seemed to be an unexpected piece of gossip. However, Ray Minkai was not the kind of person who gossiped. Therefore, Royd's self-pity was ignored by Ray Minkai. The next day, Ray Minkai was not the only one who returned from the research institute deep in the mountains. Behind him was Mira, who had been away from school for a while. "Brother, why do you have to go back to school? I still have some technical problems that I haven't dealt with yet." Mira, who had changed into her school uniform, looked at the school gate of Array Generation High School with some difficulty. Compared to staying in school, Mira seemed to prefer to stay in Naku and carry out various technical development and equipment improvement projects for the Raging Flame Demon Sword. "Mira, body development is important, but you have to pay attention to the balance between work and rest. What's more, UFFI is also studying in this school now." Your Majesty? Your Majesty is also studying in Array Generation High School?" Mira, who was immersed in body development technology, did not seem to know that Euphemia had entered this Array Generation High School, so when Ray Minkai mentioned it, she was very surprised. "Yes. In addition, you have to call Her Majesty UFFI or Euphemia in school. Otherwise, UFFI might be angry," Ray Minkai reminded Mira with a smile. Other than in the palace and on the throne, Euphemia did not want the people close to her to be bound by the identity of the Empress of the Britannia Empire when they were together. Mira, who had not yet realized what was happening, nodded blankly. Suddenly, an explosion tore apart the tranquility of Array Generation High School's morning. Boom! The surging flames rushed out of the gate on the first floor, and in the strong airflow, some torn clothes and cloth shoes that were burned through by the heat flew everywhere. The sound of explosion and screams suddenly became the main melody at this time. Looking at the billowing smoke, the messy gate, Ray Minkai's eyebrows quickly jumped a few times. "Xiangliang Zongjie." However, before Lei Minkai could make a move, a familiar and sharp female voice suddenly rang out. And at the same time, the sound of a heavy slap that made one's head shrink subconsciously followed closely behind. "What the hell are you doing? Xiangliang Zongjie, what are you doing so early in the morning? Explain it to me." Before the smoke dissipated, Ray Minkai heard a familiar reprimand from inside. "Is it starting again?" Ray Minkai shook his head slightly, and took Mira to find Tokapan Kyoko standing by the messy gate. "It's Ray-sensei. Mira-san, you're back to school too." When Tokapan Kyoko saw Ray Minkai and Mira appear at the same time, she suddenly cried out in surprise, and then looked back at the gate, looking at the two people who were making a scene. "Yes. I don't know what's going on." When Koichi and I walked to the school gate, the entrance suddenly exploded. "I see." Although Tokapan Kyoko didn't know what was going on, Ray Minkai had already guessed it. So, after looking around to see if there were any injuries, Ray Minkai walked through the gate and separated the two people who were making a scene. "Okay. Student Chidori, and Student Xiangliang Zongjie." The most important thing now was not to pursue Xiangliang Zongjie's fault, but to deal with this mess as soon as possible. "Isn't that right?" "Humph. Xiangliang Zongjie. Just you wait. You'll come with me to see the president later." Chidori also knew that she had to deal with this mess as soon as possible, so after leaving behind some harsh words, she pulled her good friend Tokapan Kyoko and the confused Mira to start cleaning up the aftermath. "Sergeant Xiangliang Zongjie. This is not a battlefield. Moreover, the amalgam should not make any moves for the time being. I hope you can be quiet for a while." Although Ray Minkai knew that Xiangliang Zongjie's personality was like this, but to be on the safe side, Ray Minkai still had to remind Xiangliang Zongjie. Otherwise, if Xiangliang Zongjie hurt Euphemia in a moment of recklessness, it would probably rise to the level of an international dispute. After all, with Euphemia's status as the Empress of the Empire, that kind of price was not something that Xiangliang Zongjie could bear. "Yes, I got it." Obviously, Xiangliang Zongjie also thought of this problem, so Xiangliang Zongjie, who was covered in cold sweat, immediately responded. The only thing was, how long would the effect last? Ray Minkai himself had no idea. Looks like State Zero still needs to follow UFFI closely. Chapter 409. In the end, the farce was over. However, under Xiangliang Soji's morning explosion, those students who were injured because of it also received painful but happy compensation as well as a long period of sick leave. In addition, the original principal seemed to have made a decision. On the third day after Euphemia entered the school, he decisively gave the position of principal to another new principal with the reason that her illness had worsened. This new principal accepted a huge amount of sponsorship from the Mithril group behind Xiangliang Soji without any hesitation. Thus, he also very smoothly cooperated with Lin Shuadungsen, the student council president, to settle the mess created by Xiangliang Soji. However, the mess created by Xiangliang Soji was settled. But a new mess quietly arrived when the lunch break was about to end. What? Someone went missing? Sitting in the office, Ray Minkai, who was browsing through the technical information sent by Royd, looked at Lin Shuadungsen, who suddenly came to the office with some surprise. Lin Shuadungsen closed the paper fan in his hand with a pa sound and slowly nodded his head. His expression actually revealed a trace of graveness. From his expression, it seemed that this sudden incident wasn't a simple missing person case. Teacher Lei. This is the information regarding some unknown strangers who appeared near Jindai High School recently. Under Lin Shuadungsen's signal, the young girl Mei Shiyuanren, who always followed behind him, handed over a notebook with a bunch of dates and places where the strangers appeared in front of Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai, who didn't know what was going on, casually flipped open the notebook and looked at Lin Shuadungsen with some doubt. This should be handed over to the police. Why give it to me? Swish. Lin Shuadungsen's hand moved and the paper fan that was just closed opened up again. Unknowingly, the words malicious intent were actually written on it, and it was even written in Chinese characters. Looking at this familiar idiom, Ray Minkai's eyes secretly twitched a few times. What is this guy hinting at? Teacher Lei. The meaning of the time and place recorded in here, maybe other people don't know, but I believe that Ray Minkai has already guessed it. Lin Shuadungsen's face was more than half covered by the paper fan, only revealing a pair of eyes that were sizing up Ray Minkai's expression. Really? Ray Minkai lowered his gaze and didn't reveal any abnormality that Lin Shuadungsen could see. Maybe I should go to the police. I believe that they will be interested in the information provided by the student council president of Jindai High School. Ray Minkai's uncooperative, Lin Shuadungsen slightly frowned. From the beginning, he had been secretly investigating the activities of the strangers who had recently appeared near Jindai High School through certain channels. It wasn't until the first moment of the disappearance that Lin Shuadungsen dared to confirm that these strangers were probably here for some people who had recently entered Jindai High School. Teacher. Although according to the current situation, calling the police was undoubtedly the best solution. But as a teacher, don't you think you should do something for those missing students? Lin Shuadungsen continued to try to dig out information that he didn't know from Lei Minkai's mouth. Calling the police is what we can do for now. After all, even with this information, we can only do so much. No matter how hard Lin Shuaichun tried, Lei Minkai remained unmoved. He looked like he needed to call the police to deal with this matter immediately. In the end, Lin Shuadungsen gave up the idea of continuing to interrogate Ray Minkai and tried to find a way to solve the current predicament through the power behind his right-hand woman. After watching Lin Shuadungsen and Myoshu Hara leave, Ray Minkai immediately closed the database in his hands and connected to another communication. It's me. Do you have time now? Fianna. Yes. Knight Captain. I have an hour of free time now. After that, I'm afraid I have to attend a physical education class. On the other side of the communication, Fianna asked calmly. Yes. go to the back of the mountain. I suspect that there are people spying on this area near Jindai High School. Find out as soon as possible. UFFI's safety will be taken care of by State Zero. You don't have to worry. Ray Minkai stood up and looked at the green mountain forest outside the window. If there was anything that could make a person disappear during a short lunch break, the mountain forest behind Jindai High School would be the best place to commit the crime. Yes, Ray Minkai had enough confidence in Fianna's ability to act. However, until now, Ray Minkai did not understand the thoughts of those people. If they were targeting Euphemia, they would not attack the students of Jindai High School. After all, Euphemia, who had just arrived, did not have many acquaintances in this school. However, if he placed his target on Qianyao, the answer seemed to be on the verge of coming out. Reynold? As soon as this question came out, Ray Minkai immediately rejected it. Whether it was Mithril's intelligence channel or Mallory's own intelligence channel, they all showed that Reynold was now incorporating the leaders of amalgam forces all over the world. He had no time to care about the situation here. If it's not Reynold, then who could it be? Miss QE. When the new hypothesis surfaced, another face immediately appeared in Ray Minkai's mind. It was a face with typical clown makeup. No. If it's them, I'm afraid Lin Shuichun wouldn't believe that an ordinary person could track them. No matter how powerful the underground forces behind his wife are, they wouldn't be able to detect the enemy's actions from the depths of the stars. After listing all the possibilities one by one, Ray Minkai, who rejected them one by one, could not come up with an accurate answer in the end. Fortunately, Fianna, who went to the back of the mountain, sent a message that made Ray Minkai come to a conclusion. Sir Knight Chief. It seems to be someone from Amalgam. In the back of the mountain, Fianna stared at a wheel trail that was out of place in the surrounding wood. At the end of this set of tracks was a highly hidden camp, but now it was empty. The sharp-eyed Fianna was able to deduce the general outline from the traces left in the camp. Amalgam? This was an unexpected answer, but it was also a reasonable answer. A stranger who could wander around Array Dai High School, except for Mithril, could only be Amalgam, who was also pursuing the Whisperers. However, if this was someone from Amalgam, then whose force was it? After thinking about it, Ray Minkai raised his hand and dialed a number. It's me. Do you have time now? The communication was quickly connected. Especially after hearing Ray Minkai's voice, the person on the other end of the communication became extremely respectful. Yes, Sir Knight Chief. Please tell me. The communication that Ray Minkai dialed was the new Mr. Au Qian Shanwu. If there was anyone who could sort out all the amalgam members in Japan in such a short period of time, it would be the new Mr. O. After Ray Minkai's voice calmly and briefly explained the current situation, he soon received a reply from Qian Shanwu. Sir Knight Chief, I didn't send anyone to participate in this matter, but in my information channel, no other executive officer gave the order to execute this plan. Qian Shanwu paused, then showed a mocking smile. After all, everyone can't even protect themselves now. Either they will be swallowed by others, or they will be torn apart and swallowed alive by Reynold. Is that so? Then, maybe I can already make a conclusion. Qian Shanwu, continue to carry out your mission. I will take care of things here. Yes. After Qian Shanwu didn't have any news about the amalgam troops that appeared at Sendai High School, there was only one possibility. That was the amalgam troops that appeared near Sendai High School. They were probably a remnant, a troop that lost its commander and automatically broke away from the amalgam's power network. Fianna, confirm the enemy's position as soon as possible. In addition, before reinforcements arrive, keep a safe distance to monitor as much as possible. Yes, Sir Knight Chief. Ray Minkai, who had arranged everything, turned and walked out of the office. However, before he could go far, the door of Class 2 Class 4 was suddenly opened. An angry face also appeared outside the door. Moreover, it was accompanied by Tokapan Kyoko's slightly panicked cry. Xiaoyao. Xiaoyao. Don't be impulsive. We can still call the police. As soon as he heard Tokapan Kyoko's words, Rei Minkai's eyes suddenly became fierce. It seemed that the answer was about to come out. The troops that appeared near Sendai High School were probably amalgam. Otherwise, it would be difficult to explain Chidori's angry expression. Chidori, don't worry. I rescued the students who were kidnapped. Without hesitation, without pause, as if he was telling a simple fact, Sagara Sosuke suddenly stood up from his seat and looked at Chidori, who was waving the envelope in his hand. As soon as he heard Sagara Sosuke's words, Chidori was about to explode. Chidori, who was already angry, took out a huge paper fan from somewhere and beat it crazily at Sagara Sosuke's head. Do you want to die? You don't even know how many kidnappers there are? Looking at Chidori, who was crazily using Sagara Sosuke as a punching bag, Rei Minkai coughed a few times, indicating that it should be time for everyone to notice him. Ahem. Everyone, calm down. Our teacher already knows about the rumors of the kidnapping that suddenly appeared in the school. After many investigations, this is just a prank. Everyone can go back to class and prepare for the next class with peace of mind. After casually comforting the excited Chidori and the other students, Rei Minkai pulled Sagara Sosuke over. Sagara Sosuke. Now, we still have some compensation for the explosion in the morning that we need your help with. Please come with me. Euphemia, who was sitting in the classroom, tilted her head slightly and whispered a few words. Will there be anything wrong? What do you think will happen? You should be worried about the kidnappers. If I follow them, I'm afraid the back mountain of the school will suffer. White Cat State Zero, who was lying on the table, opened its eyes slightly and said disdainfully. White Cat State Zero also knew about Rei Minkai's previous communication. Therefore, White Cat State Zero, who understood its position, would not worry about Rei Minkai's safety. Is that so? Then we should also look after Chidori and Mira. Yes. Not long after, Sagara Sosuke, who was forcibly dragged from the classroom to the back of the school by Rei Minkai on the grounds of assistance, finally came back to his senses. Night Chief, have you confirmed the identity of the kidnapper? Yes. It should be the amalgam. Or rather, it should be the residual molecules that separated from the amalgam. As Rei Minkai spoke, Fianna's message came through the communication channel. His previous speculation was correct. The real culprit of the kidnapping was the amalgam. The fanatic who betrayed the amalgam belonged to the former Mr. Au and was loyal to him. Although he did not know the reason, after the former Mr. Au was killed by Qian Shanwu, these fanatics seemed to receive a common order to guide them to complete the former Mr. Au's final mission. From the results of Fianna's secret observation, this traitor who betrayed the amalgam should have come for Chidori. Moreover, the hostages they captured were also good classmates who could talk to Qianyao in the Array Generation High School. It's really down and out. After Fianna sent back the photos she took, Rei Minkai showed a mocking smile. From the pictures, although these traitors looked good, their clothes were extremely unnatural. It was as if they hadn't been washed in the past month, and they looked as sloppy as if they hadn't been washed in the past month. Night Chief, is this the kidnapper? Sagara Sosuke, who was standing next to him, also noticed the photos from the front and couldn't help but take a look. Yes. Do you have any ideas? Rei Minkai glanced at Sagara Sosuke, an expert among experts. Yes, I have some ideas. It's just that I need your help, Night Chief. Okay. Now Fianna is on standby over there. If you have any plans, tell her as much as possible. It's just that I hope to leave a few alive. I still have some things to dig out from their mouth. Understood. In the woods behind the Array Generation High School, a trembling young girl had both her hands tied and her mouth sealed with tape. She could only look at the terrifying man walking in and out of the tent with a terrified expression. Boss, why are we still doing this? That Mr. AU is dead. We should hurry up and find the next home. The man who was being watched by the frightened girl walked impatiently to the man who was sitting in the depths of the tent without saying a word. Wait a little longer. If we leave like this, I'm afraid we'll have to eat the northwest wind. The man called the boss lowered his gaze slightly and fell on the photo on the table. If we can catch this girl before we leave and give her to Reynold, we will still be the trump card of the amalgam. Isn't that right? Chapter 410. That's it. As far as Lei Mingkai's eyes could see, there were less than 10 people scattered all over the forest behind the mountain. That's it. Other than that, there is only one AS body that has turned on the ECS system and is hidden in the depths of the wood. Fianna calmly said the information she had gathered. Although Lei Mingkai knew that the quality of Amalgam's combat personnel was very good, they still dared to cause trouble in this high school with less than 10 infantry and the power of a king of hell, knowing that there were still mithril combat personnel in this school. Should it be said that Reynold was cautious in the original timeline? Or should it be said that this group of people didn't understand the importance of mithril to Chidori High School? Lei Mingkai pondered for a moment and felt that there might be another possibility. Fianna, did Qian Shanwu contact you? Fianna nodded. We contacted him 10 minutes ago. According to what he said, something should have happened when he incorporated the forces of the original Mr. AU, which caused a team that was once valued by the original Mr. AU to defect and leave. Defectors? If that's the case, it might explain why he acted so recklessly. The news from Qian Shanwu had already made Lei Mingkai understand what was going on with this group of kidnappers that had suddenly appeared. It turned out that the amalgam was determined to seize Chidori, then it would inevitably reproduce the scene that Lei Mingkai knew. Otherwise, the amalgam wouldn't use this almost unplanned action. Moreover, through the existence of Qian Shanwu, Lei Mingkai had already secretly controlled at least 1/3 of the amalgam's forces. He was also competing with Reynold, who also controlled 1/3 of the amalgam's forces, for the remaining 1/3 of the amalgam forces. Fianna, get ready to move. Since it's not an attack by the amalgam, we don't need to be so cautious. Solve this matter as quickly as possible. Yes. Fianna responded, but did not act immediately. Is there anything else? Yes. The soldier from Mithril wants to participate in this operation. In addition, after Mithril learned about this, it seems that they have sent the other 2 members of the SRT team here. Under Lei Mingkai's inquiry, Fianna told him the news from Xiangliang Sosuke and Mithril. Captain Teresa's instructions? It should be that after Xiangliang Sosuke learned the news, he immediately sent a request for help to the son of Dan Nu. Lei Mingkai pondered for a moment, then waved his hand. Since Mithril wants to solve this matter, let them handle it. Fianna, just make sure you don't let the leader get away. I need to know something from him. Yes. Fianna agreed, then turned and left. A few minutes later, a gunshot broke the silence of the forest. 222. What followed were several rapid and short bursts of shots and the muffled thuds of bodies falling to the ground. It was Xiangliang Sosuke and Kurlutz. One of them was responsible for sniping the enemies that might hinder Xiangliang Sosuke's assault, and the other was responsible for the assault as fast as possible. In just a few seconds, the enemies who controlled the passage leading to the foot of the mountain were killed by Xiangliang Sosuke and Kurlut. Well, good job. Lei Mingkai watched all of this happen through the binoculars and couldn't help but nod. It's just that the infantry was easy to deal with, but the Hell King hiding by relying on the ECS system was the biggest obstacle. Boom! While thinking, a cloud of soil mixed with broken branches exploded in the woods. In the midst of the soil that soared into the sky, the Hell King who had activated the ECS system was also forcefully pulled out of the ECS state by this impact. Obviously, the change of the Hell King being pulled out shocked the enemies, who were trying to suppress Xiangliang Sosuke. They didn't expect that the Hell King they had would be pulled out of the ECS state. What happened? The Hell King was discovered? The Hell King's pilot didn't pay attention to the surprise of his companions, but immediately raised his right hand and opened a screen in the direction of the attack. Boom! In the next second, an explosion suddenly occurred on this screen. Immediately afterward, a flash of light split the thick smoke caused by the explosion and slashed fiercely on the screen opened by the Hell King. The loud sound of the impact made the enemies hiding next to them frown, but the corners of their mouths curled up into a mocking smile. In the memories of these enemies, any AS who dared to directly attack the screen produced by the Lambda drive system would inevitably suffer a backlash. However, the situation of dying from the backlash in the memory did not appear. What appeared in front of the Hell King's pilot was the longsword that was blocked by the screen and revealed its true body. It slowly cut open the screen opened by the Lambda drive system and slashed at the Hell King hiding behind the Lambda drive system at an increasing speed. How can this be? This phenomenon was beyond the scope of knowledge that the Hell King's pilot could understand. It made the Hell King's pilot, who had been relying on the Lambda drive system, lose his mind. There was no way for him to react to the longsword that was slashing in front of him. Squeak! The armor on the Hell King's body was cut open. Following that, the pilot's stunned expression disappeared under the sword light that cut the King of Hell in half. In the wind caused by the slash of the sword, the Hell King, who was regarded as the enemy's trump card, was cut in half by the sword and fell to the ground with a loud bang, splashing a cloud of dust. This, on the other side, Xiangliang Sosuke, who saw the Hell King appear with his own eyes but was cut in half by the sword in the next moment, subconsciously asked, "Yura's too. Is it you?" "No. It's not me. I haven't launched an attack yet, and that guy jumped out without permission." Melissa's bitter smile came from the communication. Melissa, who had come all the way here and was ready to join the battle, realized that she might have come for nothing in the battle just now. "It's not Sister Mao? Then who could it be?" Cruz's doubts also sounded in the communication channel, but the next moment, his gaze also looked through the scope of the sniper rifle and saw the real culprit who cut the Hell King in half. That's the Lionheart Knight? This paint is used by the commander? Cruz's surprise also made Melissa look at the red body that kicked the remains of the Hell King to the side. The red Lionheart Knight. Looks like it's Fianna's personal guard captain. 222. Xiangliang Sosuke raised his hand and fired a series of shots, knocking down the enemy who tried to turn around and escape to the ground. He then turned his head to look at the red Lionheart Knight. "Looks like our work is unnecessary." Rei Minkai didn't know whether Xiangliang Sosuke's actions were unnecessary or not. He only knew that he had to pry out the information that the leader who was tied up and sitting on a chair knew. Of course, whether it was Mithril or Avalon, there were enough interrogators, so Rei Minkai didn't have to do it himself. What he needed to do was to sit on the side and wait for the news. And the unlucky female student was taken away by Lin Shui Duanshin and Mei Shu Yuanren, who heard the news. "Knight, if we knew you were here, we wouldn't have to come all the way here." When Lei Minkai and Cruz met, this guy immediately poured out his grievances. "Isn't it good to come here? At least, you'll have a few days off to walk around here." Rei Minkai smiled and didn't pay attention to Cruz's complaints. This guy was only acting like this because he was unhappy that Fianna had snatched away a great opportunity that should have been in the limelight. Don't. How is that possible? Right now we're very busy." Cruz glanced at Melissa, who was in the middle of interrogating Lei Minkai, and quietly pulled Lei Minkai to the side. "I say, Knight, are we about to have a decisive battle with the amalgam?" Rei Minkai narrowed his eyes slightly, but he was a little surprised by Cruz's current behavior. At least in Rei Minkai's memory, Cruz didn't have such a behavior. "Maybe." Rei Minkai nodded. He didn't admit it, but he didn't deny it either. It was said before that the amalgam was torn. Starting from the moment the original Mr. AU died, the newly assembled amalgam suddenly split. One side was Qian Shanwu, who became the new Mr. AU with the support of Mithril and Avalon, and the other side was Reynold. According to various news reports during this time, the competition between the two sides for the remaining resources of the amalgam had reached a white-hot level. If Ray Minkai wasn't in the amalgam's sphere of influence controlled by Qian Shanwu, he would have seen a battle quietly starting. No matter what, let's get ready first. Ray Minkai patted Cruz's shoulder. Melissa's interrogation skills were very high. She didn't spend much effort to get the information Ray Minkai wanted. Boring. How boring. I thought this guy's bones would be a little tougher. In the end, he's a soft-footed shrimp. Knight, this is the information you want. Melissa put a document in front of Ray Minkai and waved her hand disinterestedly. Okay. This is the end of my mission. Now, except for Xiangliang Sosuke, the rest of the SRT team will withdraw to the Son of Dan Slave. Knight, see you later. Melissa's farewell was straightforward and didn't drag on at all. She didn't even show the slightest interest in the information Ray Minkai wanted. She left so quickly. Ray Minkai shrugged and then opened the document. After roughly glancing at the information recorded in the document, Ray Minkai casually threw the document on the table and got up to look at the dark night sky outside. This traitor team wasn't acting on a whim. From the fundamental point of view, this team was probably under the influence of someone and took the action of trying to take Chidori away. If it weren't for the leader of this traitor team's thinking, it would have been solved so easily today. However, this way the problem would arise. Why did he let this team come to cause trouble when he knew that the leader of this team was lacking in ability? Would the person hiding behind this team, Reynold, be such a superficial person? The answer was obvious. Reynold wouldn't do useless work. This man, whose mind had reached the extreme of darkness and whose thinking was distorted to the point of making people's hair stand on end, was not the kind of person who didn't have a plan. If he did this, it wasn't to take Chidori away. I'm afraid that he wanted to send a signal to Ray Minkai. An invitation signal. Invitation? Reynold, your invitation letter is really expensive. A team equipped with the King of Hell, Reynold said he would give it away. As expected of the man who mercilessly gave away the chess pieces buried in the upper echelons of Mithril. On the other side of the earth, the sea breeze late at night was bone-chilling. Reynold's clothes fluttered in the sea breeze. His eyes were slightly raised as he stared at the gradually rising full moon. Behind him, there was the sound of subtle footsteps. Good evening, Miss Q. It's so late, aren't you going to rest? Without turning his head, Reynold knew who it was. Aren't you the same? Your Excellency Reynold. I didn't expect that such a vicious and merciless person like you would hesitate at this critical moment. Compared to Reynold, who was wearing a coat, the clothes on Miss Q, as a woman, were much thinner. If that fitting red dress was placed at a banquet, it would definitely be an existence that would capture people's minds. However, it was so inappropriate on the beach that was filled with bone-chilling winds. Hesitating, Reynold retracted his gaze and looked at Miss Q's red dress that was tightly clinging to her body under the sea breeze. He smiled slightly and said, Miss, are you saying that I'm not gentlemanly enough and didn't put my coat on you at the first moment? In response, Miss Q snorted disdainfully. Even though Miss Q was wearing a thin red dress, she was not afraid of the bone-chilling sea breeze. She coldly said, No, Reynold. I'm saying, why didn't you take action immediately after determining the location of Mithril's headquarters? You have to know that we're not the only ones spying on Mithril's headquarters. We're not the only ones? Mississippi. Now is not the time. Our preparations have not been completed yet. Besides, miss, isn't your mech not ready either? Reynold didn't care much about Miss Q's responsibilities. Reynolds' words made Miss Q fall silent. Then, Miss Q turned around and left without looking back. She didn't have the slightest intention of saying goodbye to Reynolds. Leonard was already used to this cold and arrogant look. How ruthless! I didn't expect Miss Q to be so angry. At this time, a teasing voice was sent to Reynolds' ears by the sea breeze. Your Excellency Mr. J. If you come back, you'd better let me know. Reynolds turned his gaze and looked at the other side, at the empty beach. Under his gaze, there was a distortion on the beach, and an extremely strange pale face appeared. It was the clown. It was also Mr. J. Sorry, Your Excellency Reynolds. Fortunately, I didn't disappoint you. Chapter 4:11. This was a different story from the original setting. It could also be understood that in order to maintain the writing idea of this book, the dual settings of the abyss setting and the space-time singularity were adapted. The setting sun was blood red. On a remote island in the Pacific Ocean, the tide that hit the shore back and forth had been stained by the scarlet that gathered from the beach. In the sky, the seagulls that were still lingering around looked down at the island that had already become a land of death. They were constantly observing how the humans who brought death to this island were killing their own kind. Bang! A gunshot tore apart the island that had been stained with scarlet and shrouded in death. Get out of here, Reynolds. Now, you still have time to turn back. The undisguised murderous aura, as well as the handgun held by the iron-like wrist, constantly reminded the young man, whose body was mostly dyed red by blood, not to take another step forward. Ah! A scream of pain rang out. It was made by a pretty girl with long brown hair. The girl, who was almost driven to the edge of collapse by the bloody scene of corpses in front of her, screamed in pain. Let me go! Let me go! Why did you bring me here? I can't do what you said at all. Let me out of here! Shut up! Facing the muzzle of the gun, the young man still pulled without fear. The girl, whose hair was pulled by the young man, suddenly felt pain. Let her go. Reynolds, this device is not for you to use at all. Why are you so stubborn? Standing on the corpse of his comrade, the middle-aged man, who was almost the last guardian of this island, shouted loudly. However, his shout did not have the desired effect. Perhaps, from the beginning, his voice would not have played any role at all. Because, from the beginning, the young man's mind had already been decided. Since that night, the taboo he witnessed. Since that time, he was pushed away by his mother. In the young man's heart, perhaps he had already made up his mind. Until today, the young man, who had exhausted all means and did not hesitate to dye his hands red, finally came in front of the device he knew. For this reason, he sacrificed everything he had, and also burned all his subordinates, power and wealth, in order to stand in front of this device and then send the girl, who had been controlled by it, to it. Activate the device. Fulfill his wish. Now, before completing this step, he still needed to clear the last obstacle. What a joke! Lieutenant Colonel Kalinin, I didn't expect that my last enemy would be you. Why didn't you accept my invitation? Logically speaking, to a certain extent, you and I are the same. This world is so ugly, so dirty. Why do you still stand in front of me? The youth's left hand pulled the innocent girl's hair, while his right hand slowly raised the pistol, firmly pointing it at the middle-aged man called Kalinin. Reset the world? Ha. What a beautiful wish. However, after thinking about it carefully, I realized that humans are creatures that live in the present. Whether it was the past or the future, most people's attention was focused on the present. Even the child I hope for should live in the present. The middle-aged man's index finger slightly tightened, and his sharp eyes stared at the young man in front of him, who was Reynolds. The child you hope for? Is it that young soldier called Xiangliang Sosuke? Ha! What a pity. In the surprise attack just now, he and my fallen angel perished together. The young man, who was called omniscient by his subordinates, said everything he knew with a smile. Then, the young man once again sent out an invitation. Lieutenant Colonel Kalinin, I am very sorry for Xiangliang Sosuke's death. But isn't there an opportunity in front of you now? As long as you get out of the way, after I send this woman to the device, everything will start again. And the dead Xiangliang Sosuke will stand in front of you again. Reynolds' voice was like a devil's whisper, constantly ringing in Kalinin's ears. Bang! Kalinin fired. The whistling bullet didn't hit Reynolds. Instead, it brushed past the feet of the poor girl under Reynolds' control and fell into the pool of scarlet, splashing the girl's clothes red. Reynolds, I've said it. I'm not interested in your plan. Moreover, even if the world is reset like you said, it's still not enough. But, in that reset world, you will still exist. At that time, if you're still not satisfied, do you have to reset it again? Kalinin's words made Reynolds stunned. In fact, Reynolds had never thought of what Kalinin had just said. He had never thought of it. All he knew was to find a suitable whisperer, then take the device from Mithril and reset the world. But what would happen after the world was reset? Reynolds really didn't think about it carefully. Perhaps, in Reynolds' heart, there was only a trace of beautiful light left in his life that was almost extinguished in the illusory reset world. Humph, humph. Humph, ha 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 ha. Reynolds laughed. He really laughed. This was not a laugh of anger. Instead, it was a carefree laughter after being reminded and coming to a sudden realization. I really regret it, Lieutenant Colonel Kalinin. If only you could have said these words to me earlier. Maybe I wouldn't have made these mistakes. Reynolds' words made Kalinin stunned. However, the next second, a gunshot rang out. Bang! It was Reynolds' pistol that fired. At the moment when Kalinin's mind was disturbed by Reynolds' words, Reynolds fired without hesitation. The moment the red flower that symbolized Kalinin's last life bloomed, it meant that no one was blocking Reynolds' path anymore. Reynolds, you'll regret it. Kalinin, who had been fighting with his last breath against Reynolds, struggled to take his last breath. Maybe. Lieutenant Colonel Kalinin, I hope you and I can be good friends in the new world. Finally clearing all obstacles, the youth strode forward, resolutely and coldly stepping on the dark red that drowned the ground, dragging the girl who had lost all ability to resist and will to the device that was said to be able to reset the world. Go. Complete the mission that you have been living since you were born. The moment the girl's body completely disappeared into the device, the world in front of Reynolds' eyes turned white, and all the sound was gone, leaving only an indescribable silence. When the sound returned to Reynolds' ears again, when the color appeared in front of Reynolds' eyes again, Reynolds' consciousness gradually returned, and everything in front of him was in his eyes. The furnishings in front of him were so strange yet familiar, but Reynolds was able to call out the names of the furniture placed in front of him in the next moment, and skillfully find the toys hidden under the table. I'm back? This was a memory that Reynolds had almost forgotten. This was the room where Reynolds lived when he was a child. Moreover, Reynolds, who was standing in front of the mirror, saw the young face. That was him when he was a child. Looking around, frantically looking for the calendar and the alarm clock, and after comparing the time with the days, Reynolds sat by the bed, looking at the familiar room with surprise and disbelief. Am I really back? A new world? Although Reynolds had vowed to reset the world before, after the world was really reset, Reynolds was somewhat at a loss. Ding dong! Ding dong! Just as Reynolds quietly destroyed everything in front of him, a loud bell rang. The bell kept echoing in the room, awakening the light in Reynolds' eyes. When Reynolds' eyes became completely bright, Reynolds suddenly jumped up from the bed. Oh no, Mom! In the sound of the bell, Reynolds was deeply hurt by the memory that he had almost forgotten. Yes, it was today. In the depths of his memory, Reynolds, who was a child, bumped into his mother's taboo mistake today. This was also the mistake that affected Reynolds' life and led to Reynolds' tragic life. Without any thoughts, Reynold, who just followed his instincts, pushed open the door and ran toward his mother's room. Hurry up! Hurry up! However, just as Reynold was about to walk down the stairs, he suddenly stopped. If you are still not satisfied with the world after the reset, what will you do? Do you want to reset it again? Kalinen's words sounded in Reynolds' mind inexplicably. In an instant, an inexplicable fear firmly controlled Reynolds' limbs, making him unable to take even a step forward. Even though Reynold was a ruthless person who would sacrifice everything to achieve his goals before the world was successfully reset, when he was faced with this world that was very likely to have been successfully reset, and when he was about to see his mother again, Reynolds' instincts of cowardice were awakened. Once, again, and again, Kalinen's words were like a magic spell that kept ringing in Reynolds' ears. Reynolds' limbs were like lead, and he could not move at all. Click! Suddenly, while Reynold was sweating profusely and struggling constantly, the door on the first floor opened. Someone is coming. Is it that person? The person who made Mom make a mistake? The person who caused the destruction of Reynolds' family? When the figure that Reynold resented gradually became clear in Reynolds' mind, a ball of anger suddenly controlled Reynolds' limbs and made him unable to move, and he could no longer control Reynolds' body. Dong 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 dong. The rapid footsteps were Reynolds' anxiety and fury. However, when Reynold, who rushed to the first floor like the wind, saw the figure who opened the door clearly, he was surprised to find that the person standing outside the door was not the figure that he had resented for a long time in his memory, but the figure standing in front of him again. Mother and his twin sister, Teresa. Ah! Reynold, you're awake. Seeing Reynold suddenly rush to the first floor, the woman holding Teresa's hand cried out in surprise. Then, she pondered for a moment and then smiled. Reynold, you're just in time. Why don't we go shopping together? We don't have much food at home. Can you do Mom a favor? Everything that happened in front of him had deviated from Reynolds' memory, and this deviation also made Reynold unable to react in time. Driven by instinct, his mother held his hand and left the house with his sister, Teresa, and walked towards the supermarket not far away. Brother! Here you are. In a daze, a lollipop appeared in front of Reynolds' eyes. It was Teresa. The twin sister smiled and waved the lollipop in her hand. Here you are, brother. This is Teresa's last lollipop. I'll give it to you. It's delicious. Reynold, who subconsciously took the lollipop from Teresa's hand, just nodded, and then lowered his head to look at the lollipop in his hand. A trace of warmth quietly flowed through Reynolds' heart. Different, completely different. This world is really reset? In his memory, Teresa had never given him a lollipop, but now Teresa gave him a lollipop. These changes made Reynolds' spirit gradually excited. After giving so much, he finally succeeded. The world, it's reset. Feeling the warmth in his mother's hand, Reynolds' cold heart quietly began to melt. Be careful! At this moment, an ear-piercing breaking sound suddenly tore through the noise of the street, and it even brought screams of fear to Reynolds' ears. Rising into the air. That was what Reynolds felt at this moment. Then, in the sight of flying high in the air, Reynolds saw his mother, who was holding Teresa tightly with both hands, being hit hard by a truck that came out of nowhere. Then, there was a whirl of dizziness, and the sharp pain of falling heavily on the cold ground. However, these didn't affect Reynolds' thinking and actions. Reynold, who was holding the lollipop given by Teresa tightly in his right hand, crawled up from the ground and rushed crazily to his mother and Teresa, who were knocked more than 20 meters away. Mom! That cry from the bottom of his heart finally broke through Reynolds' throat and resounded in this world. However, the woman who should have smiled in return for this fell in a pool of blood, leaving only a man who used his last strength to point at his sister, who was in his arms but was also soaked in blood. No! The ambulance came, but his mother and sister left. The world was reset. The young man was so sure in his heart. However, his mother still left. If you're still not satisfied with the world after the reset, what will you do? Do you want to reset it again? In the red and blue lights of the ambulance, the eyes that had just been melted by warmth were once again shrouded in darkness and covered by coldness. Reset again. No matter how many times, I will successfully reset the world I want. The young man looked to the east, as if he was going to cross endless time and space to look at the mysterious device that was about to be placed on a certain island by those people. Until the young man crossed a long, long time, so long that he had forgotten, and broke through one obstacle after another, so many obstacles that even he couldn't remember. Finally, one day, during the long journey, the young man, who had stopped for a while, sat on a beach and looked at the man and the cat walking toward him. He got up and smiled, welcoming them. Welcome, Knight from another world. Chapter 412. Welcome, Knight from another world. This sentence was Reynolds' opening remark. Moreover, it was to directly point out Rei Minkai's identity as a show of strength. The white cat lying on Rei Minkai's shoulder narrowed its eyes slightly, and a cold light flowed in its golden pupils. It was as soon as Rei Minkai sent out a signal, the white cat state 0 would jump up and kill the young man who had seen through Rei Minkai's identity. Rei Minkai gently raised his hand and patted the white cat state 0's little head, indicating that it should be calm. Then, Rei Minkai took out a postcard and threw it casually. The postcard spun through the air and landed on the table next to Reynolds. Did you ask someone to do this little trick? What was written on the postcard wasn't anything earth-shattering. It was just an agreed time and place. However, when the postcard appeared in front of Rei Minkai felt a sense of threat. This was personally presented by Chidori and Tokapan Kyoko, who had returned home from school when Rei Minkai was dealing with the group of amalgam traders in the back of the mountain. At first, Chidori, who did not react, only treated it as a gift from a business event. However, the moment Chidori saw the word Knight printed on the postcard, he immediately realized something. Without saying a word, he immediately dragged Tokapan Kyoko and ran back to the school as fast as he could. He bumped into Rei Minkai, Euphemia, and the others who were preparing to leave the school. Thus, the postcard in Chidori's hand was in Rei Minkai's hands. However, if one were to think of this matter negatively, the inexplicable clown did not hand Chidori a postcard, but a rope. If it was a rope that tied Chidori up, Rei Minkai would not be standing here now. This is just a small trick. There was no need to be so nervous. Sir Knight, I didn't mean to hurt that girl. It's just that, after much consideration, I can only invite you through that girl without being affected in any way. Leonard lowered his gaze and glanced at the postcard on the table. He smiled gently. I don't think that's a trick, Mr. A.G. Rei Minkai patted the head of State 0, the white cat, and walked towards Leonard. To me, this might be a demonstration, or it might be a challenge. As Rei Minkai approached, the smile on Reynolds' face grew wider. No, Sir Knight. Perhaps you have misunderstood. This was merely an invitation letter. It's just an invitation letter from a kind-hearted person who is full of curiosity and wants to make friends with you. Make friends? Leonard's words made Rei Minkai stop as he snorted coldly. I don't think I'll make any friends with you. Now, the positions of the two sides were almost in a life-and-death situation. Rei Minkai was very clear about Leonard's intentions. However, after arranging for Qian Shanwu to take over the former Mr. A's forces, it was no longer possible to sit at the same table and talk with Leonard. Is that so? Leonard was not surprised that Rei Minkai refused the invitation without hesitation. On the contrary, Leonard, who was described as omniscient by his subordinate Sabina, had already expected this before this meeting. Then, I wonder if Sir Knight is interested in accompanying me? At least, today, this afternoon. Rei Minkai frowned slightly. He didn't know what Leonard was trying to do. According to Ray Minkai's memory, what Leonard should be doing now was trying to persuade him to join his camp and fight together to reset the world. However, the Leonard in front of him was faintly a little abnormal. But Ray Minkai could not see through Leonard's abnormalities in the first place. After pondering for a moment, Ray Minkai nodded. "Thank you very much. Then, please come over here, Sir Knight." Leonard took a step back, gave up the chair behind him, and invited him to sit down. Ray Minkai gladly accepted. As the two sat down one after another, a subtle sound of mechanical operation came from not far behind. Ray Minkai turned his head slightly and saw a short-haired, bespectacled woman and two 2-meter-tall miniature AS Avenger slowly walking towards him. In their hands they were holding tea and snack. "A bunch of junk. Kai, I've told you before. In the previous world, I had seen these pieces of junk and tore them apart." After White Cat State Zero glanced at the Avenger behind the woman, its voice sounded in Ray Minkai's mind. In this regard, Ray Minkai was unmoved and did not say anything. It was not until the woman put the tea and snacks held by the two Avenger on the table one by one and then left, leaving the space to Leonard and Ray Minkai, that Leonard pointed at the woman in the distance. "She is Sabina. My subordinate." Sabina. She was the woman who had extraordinary feelings for Leonard. Sabina. "A very good subordinate. Thank you for the compliment. No matter what difficulties I encounter, no matter where I am, Sabina will always appear by my side in time." Leonard suddenly sighed, which surprised Ray Minkai a little. The scene in front of him was once again separated from Ray Minkai's memory. In just a short time, Leonard's behavior and words were somewhat different from the Leonard in Ray Minkai's memory. "Ha! Now is not the time to talk about this, Sir Knight. Do you believe that there are other worlds outside this world?" "Oh no." In the middle of his sentence, Reynolds denied his own words. "I'm very sorry, Sir Knight. That's not what I meant." But at this time, Ray Minkai spoke first. "Leonard, let's not beat around the bush. Are you talking about resetting the world?" The abnormality exuded from Leonard made Ray Minkai's nerves more and more tense. This was different from the previous Kinneas. The feeling brought by the abnormality was difficult to describe. "Ha! Yes. Our goal is to reset this world and let the world return to its original beauty." Leonard was not surprised that Ray Minkai pointed out his ultimate goal. Instead, he readily admitted the ultimate goal of his side. "Is that so? Do you think the world after the reset is really as beautiful as you imagined it to be?" Ray Minkai countered on the spot. Furthermore, what he said made Leonard slightly stunned. Then, Leonard, who quickly woke up, suddenly laughed. "Ha ha ha ha. That's right. Even I can't guarantee that the world after we reset it will be as beautiful as we imagined it to be." Leonard seemed to sigh, and then he looked at Ray Minkai and said, "But, because of this, we stop and no longer move forward?" Ray Minkai did not respond. Leonard continued, "No, that won't happen. Even if the world after resetting will not be as beautiful as I imagine, we still have the last resort to save all of this. Ha! Sir Knight, maybe you don't know, but a long time ago, someone said the same thing to me just now, but it's a pity." Leonard's eyes gradually moved and collided with Ray Minkai's eyes. Vaguely, two murderous auras burst out in mid-air and frantically strangled each other. In the increasingly cold air, Leonard's voice sounded faintly. "Unfortunately, in the end, that person was killed by me." Then, Ray Minkai refuted. "But you can't kill me now." Hearing this, Leonard suddenly smiled. "That's true. I can't kill you." While speaking, Leonard's eyes seemed to turn to the White Cat State Zero. In the depths of his eyes, there was a vigilance that could not be extinguished. "But I can trap you, Sir Knight. Your actions now, I've seen them all. Do you think that you can just rely on a mere substitute to take away that person's power and wealth? Don't underestimate people." "I'm not underestimating anyone, Leonard. I'm not underestimating you." Lei Minkai stood up and took 2 steps forward. With his back facing Reynolds, he slowly said, "You're right. Leonard, if that's your only intention today, perhaps our conversation has come to an end." Miss Q. Lei Minkai's showdown ushered in Leonard's hidden card. "What is this? Leonard, you want to use Miss Q to make a deal?" Lei Minkai turned around and looked at Leonard. "No, Sir Knight. Miss Q is a respectable lady. The reason why I mentioned her is because I want you to understand that here, you, Mississippi Q, and that Mr. J's identity is not a secret." Showdown. Leonard began to show his cards. "Sir Knight, I wonder what kind of beautiful scenery there is in your world?" "It's a beautiful scenery that can't help but recall even if you're far away from home," Lei Minkai replied. Although this was not a poetic description, Reynolds still sighed. "Is it? Sir Knight, what do you think of the scenery in front of you?" "For me, this is just a picture that occasionally changes a little." Leonard's words seemed to be sighing, but also seemed to be narrating. "In that memory that I can't remember how long it was, I saw storms at the ends of the earth, and I also saw the sea of fire that spread across the whole continent. Above the sea of sand, I saw the vast yellow sand covered by green, and the mysterious oasis that was praised by the world was restored. Even so, these sceneries that may only exist in legends are nothing more than photos buried deep in my memory to the current me." Amidst the sighing, Lei Minkai remained silent. Although this was just a somewhat poetic exclamation, Lei Minkai faintly felt that this should be the source of why Leonard in front of him made him feel unusual. "Sir Knight, perhaps, one day in the future, if there is a chance, I want to see with my own eyes how beautiful the scenery of your hometown is." Lei Minkai smiled. "If Sir Leonard is willing, maybe I can fulfill your wish now. But before that, I hope Sir Leonard can hand over the amalgam, Mississippi Q, and Mr. J. In this way, I may be able to let Sir Leonard see a more spectacular scenery." "Is that so? That's really exciting," Leonard said from the bottom of his heart. However, all of a sudden, Leonard's face turned icy cold. "But it's too late. Sir Knight. Compared to your existence, I want to turn the world into what I want it to be. The world won't go in the direction you want it to go, Leonard. But I can let the world reset its steps when it goes astray." Lei Minkai sneered, and there was a trace of ridicule in his smile. "Astray? The world doesn't go as you want it to, so you reset it. Don't you think this is arrogance, Leonard?" "Arrogance? This is the first time someone said this to me." Leonard also sneered in the face of Lei Minkai's ridicule. "Arrogance. To me, and even to the people in this world, you are also arrogant, aren't you, Knight Lei Minkai? From the moment you appeared in this world, the direction of Mithril changed." Leonard's words made Lei Minkai's heart go on alert. The direction of Mithril changed. Perhaps this was not a special remark. But for Lei Minkai, who was familiar with the plot, it was a bolt from the blue. This bolt from the blue not only shocked Lei Minkai, but also dispelled the fog he felt since he saw Leonard. Reset the world. The Leonard in front of him was not the Leonard in Lei Minkai's memory, but the Leonard who had successfully reset the world more than a few times before Lei Minkai and even Miss Q entered this world. In other words, the Leonard in front of him was already a transmigrator like Lei Minkai to a certain extent. Moreover, according to Star City's understanding and knowledge of the Abyss, the Leonard in front of him was probably an existence called a space-time singularity. Lei Minkai's expression was very calm, without the slightest fluctuation of emotions. But his mind was running frantically, quickly connecting the information he got from Lei before he set off, and finally came to the final answer. Leonard Testarossa. The reason why the young man in front of him exuded an indescribable strangeness was probably the result of him successfully resetting more than a few worlds. Thinking back carefully, Lei Minkai had a similar feeling before he came to this world. It was just that at that time, Ray Minkai did not pay much attention to this strange feeling, but it was not until he met Leonard that Ray Minkai recalled the strangeness of this feeling. It was a strange space-time feeling that a person would have after layers of superposition. And the person who once exuded the same strangeness was Lu Lucio, who had been missing for a long time. That's right. Leonard is a space-time singularity. Chapter 413. Roar. White Cat State 0 suddenly let out a loud roar and jumped down from Ray Minkai's shoulder. In the blink of an eye, the cute little white cat disappeared and was replaced by a steel lion that was 3 meters tall and more than 5 meters long. It was covered in white and ferocious armor and carried a large sword that was almost 5 meters long on its back. "Sir Reynold, please be careful." State Zero's roar startled Sabina, who was hiding not far away. She was worried about Reynolds' safety, and led the two Avengers to Reynolds' side without hesitation. She looked at the steel lion that suddenly appeared with caution. Huge. Fierce. Sabina's nerves were stretched taut by the cold glint reflected by the large sword in his hand. She knew that once the large sword was swung, even if Reynolds could survive under the protection of the two mini-Avengers, he would have to pay a price. This was unacceptable to Sabina, who placed Reynolds' life at a higher level than her own. However, just as Sabina subconsciously reached for the headset, Reynolds' hand patted her shoulder. "Don't be impatient, Sabina." Reynolds did not show the same vigilance as Sabina when he faced the steel lion that State Zero had transformed into. Instead, the smile on his face was still as relaxed as before. "It seems that we can't form a friendship between us. Your Excellency Knight." Reynolds' gaze paused on the steel lion for a moment, then he looked past the huge body, and stared at Ray Minkai. "I said from the beginning that there is no possibility of forming a friendship between us, Reynolds." Ray Minkai's answer was still the same. "Is that so? Then I'm sorry." Reynolds sighed and turned to leave. "Everyone, attack." Reynolds' turn was undoubtedly a signal for Sabina. Whether it was to follow Reynolds' orders or for Reynolds' safety. As long as Reynolds lost interest in something, Sabina would not hesitate to kill him. Da-da-da-da-da. In an instant gunshots rang out. Those tongues of flame were of different lengths. The storm-like barrage suddenly enveloped the steel lion and Ray Minkai, as if they would be torn apart in the next moment. This momentum, this formation, it was not a powerful attack that could be created by just relying on two mini-AS Avengers. Amidst the flickering flames, bursts of distorted light quietly faded away, revealing a familiar-looking mecha with a whip behind its head. It was the King of Hell. It turned out that Reynolds had hidden a team of Hell Monarchs nearby from the very beginning. That was why he had the confidence to say that he could trap Ray Minkai. Da-da-da-da. The machine gun in the hands of the Hell King crazily spat out terrifying flames, pouring bullets from the magazine towards the steel lion and Ray Minkai. It wasn't to kill the steel lion and Ray Minkai, but to restrict their movements. This was the task that Reynolds had specifically instructed at the beginning of this meeting. Sabina, and even the pilots who were piloting the Hell King, couldn't understand this task. Because in their opinion, no matter how powerful that extremely strange steel lion was, it wouldn't be able to escape from the hands of a team of Hell Lords. After all, in the eyes of these pilots who had been piloting the Hell King for a long time, the existence of the Hell King was undoubtedly invincible. Even if the long-rumored mithril had begun to be used, and the AS that also used the Lambda drive system, it couldn't make the amalgam pilots feel much threat. The gunshots tore through the air, and a harsh smell of gunpowder filled the surroundings. Looking at the target that was drowned in barrage, Sabina took a step back, then turned around and followed Reynolds, ready to leave this place. The rest would be left to the Hell King team and the two mini-AS Avengers to handle. Originally, this was how things were arranged. However, the world always likes to surprise you when you think that things have been arranged perfectly for your plan. Reynold, do you only have these means? You won't be able to stop me with just these lousy machines. As these words were spoken, a roar followed closely behind. Roar! The loud lion's roar instantly suppressed the gunshots that tore through the air. Then, a layer of arc-shaped light shield followed the lion's roar and quickly spread out from the position where the Steel Lion and Ray Minkai were, blocking the storm-like barrage until the Hell King pilots, who were stunned by the scene in front of them, stopped attacking. Moreover, the system program that controlled the 2 mini-AS Avengers that participated in the siege suddenly sounded an alarm at the moment when the light shield appeared. It judged that the Steel Lion had a fatal threat and retreated again and again. It gathered around Reynold, who had not gone far, and put on a posture of protecting Reynold. Sir Reynold. The changes on the field made Sabina's heart skip a beat, and her whole body tensed up. Don't panic, Sabina. Just like before, Reynold just raised his hand slightly to signal Sabina to calm down, and turned back to look at the field again. Is this the power of the world where you came from, Sir Knight? Whoosh! A gust of wind moved silently, rolling up bursts of sand and dust. After forming a cyclone above the Steel Lion, the sand and dust rolled up by it scattered, blocking the sight of Reynold and the others. If you think so, then so be it. In the sand and dust, Ray Minkai's voice sounded at the same time. The giant claw that was bigger than the torso of the Hell King tore the scattered sand and dust apart. Amidst the rustling sound of sand falling on the cold steel armor, the giant Steel Lion that was bigger and more terrifying than the one that appeared in front of Reynold and the others just now walked out of the sand and dust. Roar! This was a terrifying roar. Just by looking at it, the ferocious head that was bigger than the Hell King was already a great visual impact. What's more, on the back of this larger Steel Lion, there were 2 larger and longer longswords. Shashasha! Amidst the scattered sand and dust, the 2 longswords cut through the curtain of sand and dust without any hindrance, reflecting the cold and piercing sword light in the eyes of everyone present. Long-fanged lion. Looking at this ferocious and terrifying Steel Lion, Reynolds' eyes narrowed slightly. This was the information that Miss Q had told him before the meeting began. Even though he already knew the true form of the White Cat Zero in advance, after witnessing the transformation of the small and cute cat body into a Steel Lion that was far bigger than the Hell King, Reynold realized that even though he did not know how many times he had reset the world, there were still areas that he had never come into contact with and were extremely unfamiliar with. Attack! Attack! Reynold did not respond, but Sabina still maintained her calmness. The moment the momentary shock subsided, Sabina gave the order to attack again. Gunshots sounded again, but this time, the gunshots were interrupted. Roar! The lion's roar sounded almost at the same time as the gunshot. However, the moment the gunshots were interrupted, the long-fanged Lion Zero turned into a stream of light and rushed to the front of the Hell King closest to Reynold in the blink of an eye and raised its claws. Buzz! The Hell King's reaction was not slow. The moment the long-fanged Lion Zero's hill-like figure shrouded it, it raised its hand to activate its own Lambda Drive System screen. However, even if the Lambda Drive System screen allowed the Hell King to escape from the instant threat of death, it was still unable to move the Grim Reaper's scythe away from the pilot's neck. Lambda Drive System? The moment the cold ridicule sounded from the long-fanged Lion Zero's terrifying mouth, the same brilliance and the same feeling suddenly burst out from the long-fanged Lion Zero's giant claws that pressed down on the Hell King's head. Gotcha! Suddenly, the sound of something being broken tore through the air. It was not that something was broken. It was that the Hell King's attempt to use the Lambda Drive System screen to block the long-fanged Lion Zero's attack failed. The price of failure was that the King of Hell, who had always relied on his outstanding performance to kill others, was instantly torn apart under the pressure of the gigantic claw. All that was left of him was fragments scattered all over the ground. Da-da-da-da! The gunshots sounded again. When the other two Hell Kings saw their teammates being smashed into pieces by the long-fanged Lion Zero's attack, their eyes suddenly turned red and launched a crazy attack. In order for the amalgam to be able to exert the power of the Hell King's Lambda drive system, most of the pilots have various mental biases. In their view, only these pilots with mental biases can successfully activate the power of the Lambda drive system in a certain extreme mental state and use this power smoothly. Therefore, when they witnessed their teammates dying tragically under the long-fanged Lion Zero's claws, their mental state, which was already in an extreme state, instantly broke through the peak and entered a more crazy state. In this crazy state, the remaining two Hell Kings no longer cared about the coordination of the formation and firepower. In the minds of the two Hell King pilots, there was only one thought left: kill the giant beast in front of them. Driven by this crazy thought, the two Hell Kings threw away the machine guns in their hands that had already emptied the magazines, and turned to take down the long sword and spear hanging on their backs and waist, and rushed towards the long-fanged Lion Zero from the left and right. "Sir Reynold, take advantage of this, let's go." Sabina had witnessed the terrifying scene of the long-fanged Lion State Zero crushing the King of Hell that had activated the Lambda drive system in an instant. Therefore, when she saw the remaining Kings of Hell going crazy, she immediately made the decision to evacuate with Reynold. Reynold did not hesitate. He quickly chanted a few codes and let the Mini-AS Avenger in front of him rush forward to join the battle. Then, under the protection of Sabina, he decisively left this place quickly. "Kai, that silver-haired brat is gone." In the long-fanged Lion Zero's cockpit, the voice of the long-fanged Lion Zero sounded very anxious. "No. Let's deal with the enemy in front of us first." Ray Minkai also knew about Reynold's departure. However, Ray Minkai knew that Reynold was able to say that they were trapped, so he probably did not only arrange these forces. Although a small team of Hell Kings could destroy Mithril, they could not kill the long-fanged Lion Zero. Roar! For the situation in front of them, Ray Minkai remained cautious, but the long-fanged Lion Zero would not be as cautious as Ray Minkai. Since Ray Minkai only reminded them to pay attention to the changes in the surroundings, it meant that the long-fanged Lion Zero did not need to worry about what the remaining Hell Kings would do in the dark. Even if the two Mini-AS Avenger were not worth mentioning at all, the same was true for the Mini-AS Avenger that was rushing towards them. Clang! A sharp sword hum rang out. The two long swords on the back of the long-fanged Lion Zero broke through the air and slashed towards the Hell Kings that were waving their long swords and spears at lightning speed. Bang! Bang! In the blink of an eye, two crisp sounds of metal breaking rang out, and the two Hell Kings that were attacking the long-fanged Lion Zero suddenly flew out. Moreover, before the pilots of the two Hell Kings could adjust the balance of the body in time, the blade with the unique brilliance of the Lambda drive system broke through the air and slashed the two Hell Kings that were still in midair without any hindrance. "Go away!" As soon as the long-fanged Lion Zero landed, there was a hint of annoyance in the voice of the long-fanged Lion Zero. It turned out that under Reynolds' command, the two Mini-AS Avenger that rushed over took advantage of the moment when the long-fanged Lion Zero cut the remaining Hell Kings into two halves and rushed to the landing point of the long-fanged Lion Zero and posed as if they wanted to jump on the giant claws of the long-fanged Lion Zero. Seeing this, the long-fanged Lion Zero naturally would not let them succeed. Two golden lights flashed, and the two Avenger flew out on the spot, hitting the coconut tree not far away, and after rolling for a few weeks on the sea, they exploded amidst the splashing water. Boom! Towering splashes, and the coconut tree that was blown apart. It was all telling Ray Minkai that if the long-fanged Lion Zero had not slapped the two Avenger away in annoyance, the long-fanged Lion Zero would have been caught off guard. "TSK, you only know how to play these little tricks all day long." The disdainful voice of the long-fanged Lion Zero sounded in Ray Minkai's ears. The long-fanged Lion Zero. "He's here." At this time, Ray Minkai's voice became dignified. He faintly felt from the beginning of the battle that the long-fanged Lion Zero had finally blocked the long-fanged Lion Zero's pursuit of Reynold after the Hell King team and the Avenger failed to self-destruct. Long time no see. Little kitty that ruined my good thing. In front of him, there was a one-eyed mysterious body with a trace of Zagu bloodline in the outline of its body. However, the voice that came from this body made Rei Minkai's heart alert. Miss Q roar. When enemies meet, their eyes turn red. If Rei Minkai had not grasped the control of the body at the first moment, the long-fanged Lion Zero would have rushed up and torn the body in front of him apart. Are you the one that trapped us in Reynolds' words? Mississippi Q. Rei Minkai's hands held the joystick tightly, not giving the long-fanged Lion Zero a chance to control the body. Yes and no. This is just a greeting. Cute and pitiful kitty. Let me see your struggle again. It's just like the struggle that destroyed your world back then. Roar! At the mention of the broken hometown, the angry long-fanged Lion Zero finally broke free from Rei Minkai's control and rushed over crazily. However, the long-fanged Lion Zero's indestructible sharp claws did not touch anything and directly pierced through the mysterious body. In the next second, this mysterious and strange body shattered into pieces and disappeared in mid-air. Kai, go and find that damned woman. She must not have gone far. The long-fanged Lion Zero continued to run around the area crazily, vowing to find Miss Q. No. Long-fanged Lion Zero. Calm down. They have already left. Rei Minkai held the joystick tightly with both hands and stopped the long-fanged Lion Zero's movement. This is the challenge for the final battle. Long-fanged Lion Zero, the next battle will be a life and death battle. Chapter 4:14. When something they had once dreamed of was placed in front of them, perhaps many people would find it hard to believe, and thus become restrained, for fear that their momentary actions would destroy the beauty of this dream that might be an illusion. Mallory's current appearance was just like that. It had been almost a week since Rei Minkai had been invited to meet with Reynold, and a battle that was tantamount to a declaration of war had taken place. During this week, Mithril, which had completely abandoned its previous cautious attitude, attacked everywhere with the support from Avalon. In particular, with the help of the Lionheart Knight, who had the ability to fly on his own, they were able to capture many of the amalgam forces that had not yet fallen under Qian Shanwu's control in a short period of time and incorporate them one by one. This progress made Mallory, who had vowed to revive his father's long-cherished wish, feel that it was unreal for a while. It was too fast. It was really too fast. He did not expect that Mithril, which he had put in so much effort to establish, would be able to fulfill this long-cherished wish while he was still alive. Even though Avalon's contribution was also extremely eye-catching. Has the final battle finally come? It's too fast. The faster Mallory's father regained the lost territory of the amalgam, the more urgent Mallory's heart was. This was because he knew that during this week, when the original tug-of-war had turned into a one-sided battle, it meant that the enemy intended to retreat and use space to exchange for time, so that the limited power at hand could be trained into a killing move that was enough to kill Mithril, which seemed to have gained a great advantage at the moment. Isn't this even better? The more time drags on, the more advantageous it is for us. Reynold is not a fool. Sitting across from Mallory was Rei Minkai. During this week, Mithril and Avalon had joined forces to attack everywhere, but as the top combatant of both sides, Rei Minkai did not participate in this operation. As mentioned above, Rei Minkai was certain that Reynold was using space to exchange for time after the battle that was tantamount to a declaration of war, so as to obtain as much power as possible that could allow him to condense more power than before. Therefore, Rei Minkai no longer made a move. He allowed the SRT team, which had become more and more proficient in using the Lambda drive system, to use this week's intense battles to hone their control of the Lambda drive system and their skills, so as to achieve the strength to face the King of Hell head-on. From the battle reports that Teresa had personally compiled, Melissa, Cruz, and Sosuke Xiangliang truly had the halo of a main character above their head. Under Rei Minkai's deliberate guidance, the three of them had erupted with extremely high talent. Using the enormous pressure brought about by a short period of time, which was enough to send a normal person to the hospital, as motivation, they quickly completed the requirements set by Rei Minkai. This was also one of Mallory's trump cards in the final battle. Although this is the case, we also lack time. Compared to Reynolds, whose forces have been compressed to the extreme by us, our forces can't be taken into account. After all, the amalgam is too big. Even I, the executive officer of the amalgam, didn't know that the amalgam was so big. Mallory thought of the various problems brought about by the rapid capture of the sphere of influence during the week and could not help but sigh. Even after Mallory had accepted that he could no longer control the fate of the amalgam, he had turned to building Mithril and nurturing many talents who would listen to his orders and follow his commands. He had never imagined that there would be a day when his dream would be so intense. Are we short on manpower? Rei Minkai had also heard of the dilemma that Mallory was facing, but he did not have a better solution. After all, on Rei Minkai's side, only everyone on the floating battleship of Avalon could be directly mobilized. Therefore, being able to spare the Lionheart Knight Regiment to support Mithril's capture of the amalgam was already the limit. Yes, that is indeed the case. But Sir Knight Captain, you don't have to worry. Although we are a little short on manpower, we can still handle it. The most important thing for us now is to figure out how to deal with the upcoming final battle. Mallory shook his head and did not intend to continue on the issue of insufficient manpower. To him, the most urgent thing should be the upcoming final battle. If they were defeated by Reynolds in this final battle, then, no matter how well they handled the current forces and territories, it would be nothing more than an illusion. Yes, but now, a portion of our manpower has been spread out. Looking at it from another perspective, these spread-out manpower may be a very good appetizer for Reynolds. Rei Minkai knew that the final battle was imminent, but he also knew that the manpower that Mallory had sent out in order to organize the current spoils of war occupied almost all of Mallory's talent pool. Then we'll have to see if Reynolds has the ability to eat all of my men. In response to Rei Minkai's reminder, Mallory just snorted coldly. In order to nurture these talents, not only did Mallory arrange a comprehensive and efficient curriculum, but he also set up many challenges with extremely strict requirements. Half of it was forcing and half of it was asking the elites to pass these challenges. Therefore, Mallory wasn't too worried about the possibility of being attacked. In this regard, Rei Minkai just nodded and no longer reminded him. Then, the next topic is the device located in the underground of the Mithril headquarters. Now, sir, perhaps we ought to be open and honest. From Reynolds' words and deeds, his purpose is not to destroy Mithril, but to take the device stored in the underground of the headquarters, Tartaros, for his own, and to reset the world. These words made Mallory suddenly stand up, and the expression on his face was even more shocked. Tartaros, the existence of this mysterious device with the ability to reset the world, even among Mithril, not many people knew about it. But even so, Rei Minkai could say this mysterious name and the terrible power it possessed. How could this not shock Mallory? In Mallory's mind, the existence of this mysterious device might be the ultimate trump card. But he never thought that not only Rei Minkai, but also Reynolds, the enemy, had already known about the existence of Tartaros. The latter even targeted Tartaros in an attempt to use its terrible power to reset the world. How is it possible? Reynolds' ambition is so terrible. This was the first time Mallory knew about Reynolds' ambition hidden in the endless darkness. Nothing is impossible. Mallory, I believe you should know about Reynolds' childhood, right? Think about it carefully. Maybe you can understand why Reynold has such terrible ambition? Ray Minkai said lightly. He believed that even if Mallory did not have much friendship with Reynold and Teresa's father, he could learn all the details from Jerome, the current commander of Mithril's operations headquarters. Ray Minkai's reminder made Mallory fall into silence for a while. As expected, Mallory knew about Reynold and Teresa's childhood experiences. That's really a disaster. After a long silence, the many frustrations and regrets in his heart finally turned into a sigh. Then, Mallory's gaze gradually became firm. Although this is very regrettable, the current situation has reached a point of no return. And there is no possibility of reconciliation between us after Tartaros is targeted by Reynold. Mallory took a slow breath, calmed his emotions, and looked up at Ray Minkai. Sir Knight, what are your plans next? Well, maybe I should entrust the defense of Merida Island to Sir Knight. Is that okay? Although Ray Minkai had participated in the battle on the Son of Dan's slave before, for many Mithril personnel, Ray Minkai was just a stranger outside the staff. No. There's no problem. Mithril is not the barbaric amalgam. The strength that Sir Knight Commander had displayed in the previous battle was enough to convince most of the people in Mithril. Therefore, it is only right that we entrust the defense of Merida Island to you, Sir Knight. Mallory's attitude was very firm. This was not a difficult task for Ray Minkai. On the contrary, after Ray Minkai received Mallory's promise, he could not help but secretly breathe a sigh of relief. It was nothing more than a blessing to be able to take control of the defense of Merida Island before the final battle. What made Ray Minkai feel even more fortunate was that the control was not proposed by him, but by Mallory himself. For Ray Minkai, this was a guarantee that he could smoothly take over all the defense forces on Merida Island, and also avoid the possibility of conflict with the Mithril forces stationed on Merida Island. Thank you, Earl Mallory. After Ray Minkai thanked him from the bottom of his heart, he reached for the teacup on the table and bowed to Mallory. Here, I propose a toast to Earl Mallory with tea in place of wine. Ha! That's what I want to say. Sir Knight, thank you for coming. Because of your arrival, I can see the dawn of realizing my father's long-cherished wish. Yes. There was a soft sound of glasses clinking. He drank it in one gulp. From now on, Mithril and Avalon became true allies in the sense of the word, facing the final battle together. Half an hour later, Mallory left, and Ray Minkai came to Neku. During this week, Neku and Avalon was always in a state of frenzy. In addition to constantly throwing Lionheart knights into the battlefield, a special area was also designated in the depths of Neku. The purpose was to use the fastest speed to perfect the modification of the Roaring Flame Demon sword according to the combat data obtained from Ray Minkai's many times of piloting. After a week of hard work, the development team led by Royd and Mira finally pushed the first stage of the modification of the Roaring Flame Demon sword to the end. Buzz buzz, the gantry crane moving along the track slowly moved the last piece of armor to the front of the right shoulder of the Roaring Flame Demon sword, and under the guidance of the surrounding technicians, the final installation process was completed. It's done. Thank you for your hard work, everyone. The moment the gantry crane stopped, Royd, whose eyes were a little dark, suddenly clapped his hands and cheered loudly. In an instant, this area that was specially designated for the modification of the Roaring Flame Demon sword was filled with cheers. Well done. Thank you for your hard work, everyone. At this time, Ray Minkai's voice suddenly sounded, causing everyone's cheers to pause, but then, an even louder cheer swept over. Sir Knight, please look. This is the crystallization of our hard work during this period of time. The real Roaring Flame Demon sword. Roy jumped in front of Ray Minkai in 3 steps and pointed at the brand new Roaring Flame Demon sword and said loudly. As usual, the main color was silver white, accompanied by the gorgeous painting style of the royal family's coat of arms, which made Ray Minkai frown a little. This was the usual style of the body development technicians from the Britannia Empire. Perhaps this was also their common aesthetic. In their eyes, as a machine with a respected position, or even as a future prince of the Britannia Empire, it was impossible to use a low-key and plain painting. As expected, it's still like this? Regarding this problem, Ray Minkai had raised many opinions. It seemed that this group of technicians was still quite stubborn. Fortunately, except for the slightly flamboyant painting style, the technical team led by Royd and Mira perfectly fulfilled Ray Minkai's request for the other parts. First of all, as the Roaring Flame Demon Sword, which was built with the KFM body as the main technology, naturally did not lack weapons such as radiation shields and hooks. Moreover, after these conventional equipment, the Roaring Flame Demon Sword was equipped with a readjusted light wing system. When the output of this new light wing system reached a certain upper limit, it could use the excess energy in the form of energy beams to launch a storm-like attack. In this regard, it was not much different from the original Lancelot. But don't forget, the light wing system of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword could not only provide flight ability and energy beam attack, but it could also collect the heat emitted when the lambda drive system was used, and after reaching a certain threshold, it could be used in the form of an instant explosion to hit the target. Flame surfing. That was the name of this move. It was funny to say it. The discovery of this move was also quite coincidental. At that time, Ray Minkai was cooperating with Mira to test the limits of the heat dissipation of the light wing system. For some reason, when the lambda drive system was fully activated and pushed the body temperature to the extreme, the lambda drive system, which was originally under the control of Ray Minkai, suddenly went berserk. The temperature of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword's body also soared rapidly. In order to control the situation in time and to suppress the lambda drive system from going berserk, Ray Minkai and Mira immediately took action. Then, an accident suddenly happened before Ray Minkai and Mira could fully launch a self-rescue operation. While Ray Minkai was still trying to control the lambda drive system, the energy emitted by the lambda drive system suddenly swept away the heat on the light wing and poured it all in front of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword. Suddenly, the forest in front of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword was destroyed by the terrifying heat wave. In the distorted light, the forest in front of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword no longer existed, leaving behind a burning ground that seemed to have been burned by the flames of hell. Perhaps, from this moment on, the name of the Roaring Flame Demon Sword was worthy of its name. Chapter 4:15. Brother. The Fiery Demon Sword's heat dissipation system has completed the final test. That move can basically be stabilized. This time, by accident, caused the Fiery Demon Sword to have an unexpected attack method. For Ray Minkai, this was indeed an unexpected surprise. According to Myra's analysis after the event, this might be because the lambda drive system on the Fiery Demon Sword reacted to Ray Minkai's intense spiritual fluctuations when he wanted to take measures to stop the body from overheating. Thus, it led to some kind of physical phenomenon that could not be explained at the moment. This might not be a complete analysis, and could only be regarded as a speculation. But for now, this might already be the explanation for why the Fiery Demon Sword was able to instantly explode with intense heat that was enough to cause the body to crash after that accident. Ray Minkai did not care about this point. As a pilot, he cared about whether this killing weapon that was born from an accident could be transformed into a permanent equipment for the Fiery Demon Sword. Obviously, Mira did not disappoint Ray Minkai. This girl, who wholeheartedly developed a new body for Ray Minkai, had devoted all her mind and energy to the development and modification of the Fiery Demon Sword during this period of time. Behind every surprise was the result of Myra's painstaking efforts. Well done. Thank you, Mira. Ray Minkai stood on the elevator and sincerely thanked Mira, who looked a little tired. No. This is what I should do. Mira shook her head, the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, and her eyebrows were brimming with satisfaction. Myra's wish was very simple. As long as she could help Ray Minkai, Mira would do it without hesitation. Once upon a time, when Mira was still in the research institute, surrounded by many demons, and was subjected to cruel experiments, enduring pain that ordinary people could not imagine, perhaps she also had feelings of hatred for the whisperer talent she possessed? But now, Mira was glad that she had the talent of a whisperer. It was to be able to design and create a body that could make Ray Minkai invincible on the battlefield. Welcome back, Your Excellency Knight. Under Myra's gaze, Ray Minkai, who entered the cockpit of the fiery demon sword, was greeted by Ael's welcoming words. Al, report the status. Ray Minkai nodded slightly and let Ael report the current status of the fiery demon sword. Yes. According to the progress plan of Count Royd and Miss Mira for this week, I have now completed the first stage of the transformation project. In the voice, a small screen on Ray Minkai's right. What was displayed on it was the technical modifications that the Raging Flame Demon Sword had completed during this period of time. The Fiery Demon Sword's power system, the power system. According to Count Royd's concept of high compatibility at the beginning of the design, after the Fiery Demon Sword completed its first combat test, it began to upgrade and replace the power system according to the power system transformation plan jointly formulated by Count Royd and Miss Mira. The most noteworthy part of this plan is the four-limbs driving method of the Fiery Demon Sword, from the original mechanical transmission structure used by the standard pilots of the Britannia Empire, to the unique electromagnetic muscle structure of the AS. According to speculation, the current Fiery Demon Sword can burst out more than 10 times the power of the original mechanical transmission structure in an instant. Ray Minkai was not surprised that the transmission structure of the Fiery Demon Sword was replaced with electromagnetic muscle. But according to what Ael said, it could burst out more than 10 times the power of the original mechanical transmission structure. This was a bit surprising. However, recalling that among the many bodies of the AS series, even the model Barbarian who was beaten up had a maximum speed of 120 km per hour. To be able to achieve such an amazing speed, it was indispensable to the electromagnetic muscle's credit. Ray Minkai's surprise in his heart faded a lot. Al, can you simulate the maximum speed that the Fiery Demon Sword can reach when it is fully mobile? In his mind, recalling the data about the maximum speed of many AS, Ray Minkai asked casually. In the next second, a group of simulation data appeared on the small screen, as well as a high-speed maneuver simulation demonstration video calculated by the rendering engine in real time. In this real-time calculation video, the simple model representing the Fiery Demon Sword could achieve flexible and fast maneuvers on flat ground, hills, and even in complex mountain forest environments. Especially on flat land, the speed of the Fiery Demon Sword almost reached an amazing index. 280 km per hour? This is not much different from the original Fiery Demon Sword. Ray Minkai looked at the conclusion on the screen and fell into deep thought. However, this conclusion was not unexpected. After all, compared to the original Fiery Demon Sword, the current Fiery Demon Sword was not only doubled in size, but it also meant that the weight of the body would also increase with the increase of the body's rules. Although such a design could allow the body to obtain more equipment points and increase the adaptability of weapons, the increase in weight could not be ignored. Even if the current Fiery Demon Sword used the power system built by Cherry Stone's new nuclear fusion reactor, it would still be affected by the factor of weight that could not be ignored. Although this was the case, after weighing the pros and cons, Ray Minkai also approved of Myra's modification plan. Although the maximum speed of the current Fiery Demon Sword on land was not much different from the original Fiery Demon Sword, it had an ability that the original Fiery Demon Sword did not have. That was the light wing system. In front of the combat power increase brought by autonomous flight, the fastest speed was just a little brother. What about the weapons? Ray Minkai, who had made the conclusion, spoke again. Yes. Now, according to the results of Sir Knight's actual combat test, the most suitable weapons for Sir Knight to use are the 165mm howitzer, the Fire God Cannon X2, the Hook Claw X4, the Radiation Vibration Sword X2. There were not many changes to the conventional equipment of the Fiery Demon Sword. The only thing worth Ray Minkai's attention was that Royd seemed to have transplanted the Radiation Vibration Sword used by Lancelot onto the Fiery Demon Sword. This was undoubtedly good news for Ray Minkai, who fought close-range combat from time to time. In addition, Ray Minkai's attention was more on the Fiery Demon Sword's shoulders and the 4 additional points on the back. From the specifications, this did not seem to be the equipment points used by conventional weapons. Sir Knight, this is the mounting point of the new detachable auxiliary mechanical arm of the Fiery Demon Sword. According to Earl Royd's multi-purpose tactical concept in complex environments, the Fiery Demon Sword can be equipped with a maximum of 4 to 6 auxiliary mechanical arms to increase a considerable amount of equipment and increase the upper limit of the body's firepower in a short period of time. Or in some specific complex combat environments, it can use a physical shield and install a one-time radiation energy shield to increase the body's defense. As soon as the doubt appeared on Ray Minkai's face, AL responded. Oh? The mounting point of the auxiliary mechanical arm? Royd actually thought of this? As soon as he heard that this was the mounting point of the auxiliary mechanical arm, Ray Minkai was a little surprised. He didn't expect Royd to have this kind of bold design thinking. Presumably, when this guy was playing with Copperfield, he had played with the auxiliary mechanical arm for a while. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have thought of the auxiliary mechanical arm in a short period of time, which was both simple and convenient to increase the body's combat performance in a short period of time. In the end, Ray Minkai's gaze fell on the last line of names on the weapon list. SL-01, Sword in the Lake, Beam Prototype Rifle. SL. Sir Lancelot. He even named it after the sword in the lake? Royd's heart is really big. It was not difficult to guess the meaning of the simple English abbreviations. Especially after combining the words behind the abbreviations, Ray Minkai's eyebrows slightly furrowed, but they relaxed again. According to the legend, Lancelot did indeed have the sword in the lake, but after many hesitations, he was unable to return it to the lake fairy. It was not until the king died that Lancelot returned the sword in the lake to the lake fairy. Perhaps this story, in Royd's eyes, was similar to the unfinished product of the beam rifle obtained from the warehouse of the Research Institute? Thinking of this, Ray Minkai suddenly shook his head. No matter how he thought, he probably couldn't keep up with Royd's thinking. After dispelling the slightly scattered thoughts, Ray Minkai put his attention back on the sword in the lake beam rifle. Ow! This weapon hasn't been tested yet? Ray Minkai found that other than power and other related data, there was no other combat data that should be listed. Definitely. Sir Knight. The SL-01 sword in the lake is still in the laboratory stage and has not reached the relevant standards for actual combat. What you see now is the most perfect state of equipment that can be used in the Flaming Demonic Sword plan. AL gave an answer that was not surprising. After all, it had only been half a month since the unfinished product of the beam rifle was found in the warehouse of the Research Institute. No matter how powerful Royd's technology was, he would still face the lack of weapons development equipment on Avalon, which would lead to the inability to achieve satisfactory results in the shortest time possible. I see. So, other than the sword in the lake, all other equipment can be used normally? Ray Minkai finally gave up the idea of testing the beam rifle named the sword in the lake. Definitely. Sir Knight. Now, other than the SL-01 sword in the lake beam rifle, all other equipment can be used normally. I see. Begin the simulation test. Understood. In the face of a decisive battle, Avalon and even Mithril had more work to do and preparation for them. It was night. Avalon, which was high up in the sky, was not affected by the cold of the high altitude. For the utopia that could make Avalon disappear from the sight of the world and had strong defensive capabilities, isolating the cold air from the high altitude was just a trivial matter. Outside was an endless sea of clouds that reflected the faint moonlight. Above was the bright light cast by the Milky Way that spanned the sky and existed since ancient times. Euphemia, who was strolling on the deck of Avalon, raised her head slightly to look at the night sky that was similar but different. She let out a soft sigh. "UFFI, what are you thinking about?" At this time, Ray Minkai's voice came from behind. UFFI turned around, shook her head slightly, and smiled. "No. Not thinking about anything. I'm just regretful about the academy life that has just started but has to be suspended. Although Euphemia's academy life in this world was very good, it came to an end after Reynold declared war." Neither Ray Minkai nor Fianna would agree to expose Euphemia to the enemy at this critical moment. Even if Reynold might not know Euphemia's identity, Ray Minkai did not dare to take the risk. In this regard, Euphemia just habitually agreed with Ray Minkai and Fianna's suggestion and returned to Avalon. It seems that it will take some time to return to the Array Generation High School. Although Euphemia did not say anything, there was a trace of regret in her tone. Speaking of which, it made sense. In this world, no one knew that Euphemia was Her Majesty the Queen of Britannia. Even if they knew, they would probably laugh and ask, "The Britannia Empire? Which country is there? Why haven't I heard of it?" In this state of almost isolating Euphemia's identity, Euphemia finally obtained a life similar to that of ordinary people. This might be the most comfortable day for Euphemia during this period of time. UFFI, Qian Yao may come here in a few days. Ray Minkai said something that surprised Euphemia. "Qian Yao? She's coming here too?" "Yes. Although Mithril has begun to arrange for the transfer of the Whisperers they protect, the existence of Qian Yao is special. We don't dare to be careless about it. Therefore, the only thing we can do is to let Qian Yao come here and accept our protection." There was one thing that Ray Minkai did not tell Euphemia. That was the truth about Qian Yao being the key person to start Tartaros. In fact, since returning from that battle, Ray Minkai had been thinking about one thing. Why didn't Leonard immediately control Qian Yao after successfully resetting the world many times, or even more? Isn't this the fastest and most convenient way? Moreover, according to Ray Minkai's memories, Whisperers would not be affected by the reset world. How confused Ray Minkai was with the clues he had so far. If Whisperers were not affected by the reset world, then why was Leonard the only one who could bring about Ray Minkai's extremely strange and indescribable sense of space-time disorder? Qian Yao wanted it, but Teresa didn't? Puzzled, Ray Minkai inadvertently remembered what he had heard before he set off. In the space-time singularity, the people you are familiar with, and even the things you are familiar with, will undergo unpredictable changes. If you still hold the original view of the world in the space-time singularity, I'm afraid you will suffer a calamity that you can't turn around. Along this line of thought, Ray Minkai thought of a movie he had seen before, The Butterfly Effect. It was a sci-fi thriller movie. It was about a boy who could go back to the past and change the future through old videotape. However, no matter how the boy went back to the past and changed the future through old videotapes, the future he changed would always make the boy despair in unexpected circumstances. Once he returned to the past again, constantly changed the future, and constantly fell into despair. After countless changes and despair, the boy finally collapsed. In the last choice to return to the past, the boy chose to kill himself as a fetus. Lei Minkai did not know if Reynold had experienced despair again and again like the boy in The Butterfly Effect, But what Lei Minkai was sure of now was that one of the effects of the unpredictability of the constantly resetting and modifying spacetime might be that Reynold had lost the ability to predict the key figures who could start Tartaros in advance. Therefore, it was necessary to protect Qianyao as soon as possible. Chapter 416. Nansu. A city located in a tropical region, and also a city that was keen on AS wrestling. Under the promotion of interested people, AS teams with a considerable number of AS pilots gathered in this southern city. They used their own retired AS airframes that had been dragged back from the battlefield and modified to a considerable extent to carry out fierce wrestling matches. Therefore, in the visual impact of the steel collision of huge humanoid airframes, people from all over the world gathered here and bet everything they had in the collision of steel and blood. An unarmed RK-91 barbarian slowly walked along the street toward the huge arena in the middle of the street. When the huge greenish-black body passed through the street, it did attract the attention of many foreign tourists. Among them, a girl with a long pink ponytail looked in surprise at the passers-by who turned a blind eye to the barbarian strolling through the middle of the street. Are the people here used to AS swaggering on the street? Euphemia blinked and looked at the barbarian gradually disappearing into the depths of the street. Maybe. After all, AS wrestling is one of the economic pillars of this city. It can be said that as long as AS wrestling is held for a day, the residents of this city can rely on as to eat their fill. Lei Minkai smiled and briefly mentioned the hot topic of this city. Is that so? Even so, it's still not a good thing. No matter how great the benefits brought by AS wrestling are, once it gets out of control, I'm afraid the city will be caught in the flames of war. Euphemia was keenly aware of the hidden dangers behind the AS wrestling competition that was in full swing. Yes. However, to be able to hold AS wrestling in this city is a manifestation of power in itself, whether it's capital or some hidden power. Lei Minkai's words made Euphemia smile. Then, the purpose of our visit this time is for those people. Yes. Now, Lei Minkai and Euphemia were in Nansu City in the Southern Kingdom. In this city, a series of popular AS wrestling matches were being held. Behind this popular AS wrestling matches, there was a hidden mastermind behind the scenes playing with the world, Amalgam. Therefore, the purpose of Lei Minkai and Euphemia coming to this southern city on the eve of the decisive battle was to launch an operation against Amalgam. However, in this operation there was an additional factor. Yes, Kai. It's rare to come to this city. Why don't we go for a walk? After looking at the lively street for a while, Euphemia reached out and picked up the white cat, Zero, who was sleeping on the table, and sent an invitation to Lei Minkai. Well, let's go for a walk. For Euphemia's proposal, Lei Minkai naturally would not refuse. After he cast a glance at the alley next to him, he walked on the street with Euphemia. When Lei Minkai and Euphemia left, there were several figures in the alley and disappeared in the alley. Nami. A girl born in this southern kingdom. In the civil war 3 years ago, her small village was also razed to the ground in this civil war. The relatives she was familiar with, the villagers, and even the school she studied in when she was a child were all turned into ashes. In the face of the destruction of the village, but because of the fuel consumption, the RK-91 early-stage barbarian was abandoned in the ruins of the village. The girl's initial idea was to sell it and hide in the mountains, but in the end, she changed her mind. Now, the girl, who had changed her mind, was busy in this city where the AS wrestling matches were a selling point. Boss, can't this muscle bundle be cheaper? The ponytail with long orange hair fluttered slightly with the change in the girl's tone, and the pair of lively eyes also flashed with a pleading light at this moment. However, in the face of the young and pretty face, the boss, who had been dealing with AS parts for many years, did not relent because of this. Nami, you also know how difficult it is to get the original goods now. I don't know what's going on recently, The originally smooth supply channel suddenly closed a lot, so now I can't stock some parts. What I'm selling you now is my last stock. The boss crossed his hands in front of his chest, shook his head repeatedly, and continued to describe the difficulties he faced recently. Nami also knew the difficulties mentioned by the boss. Since Nami was determined to become the manager of the AS wrestling tournament, she had devoted all her energy to understand and control the AS wrestling tournament, which had become one of the city's economic pillars in just 2 or 3 years, as well as the knowledge related to it. Boss, I know what you said, but my team is going to participate in the competition next. Can you give me some discounts or something? Just once will do. Nami bit her lips, thinking hard about the budget she could use. In the end, no matter what Nami thought, the only way was to plead. In the face of Nami's pleading, although the boss was annoyed, he couldn't say anything. After all, Nami's performance since she entered the industry until now, the boss also saw it. Nami, you should stop before going too far. You can't maintain the operation of a team by yourself. Even if your good luck allows you to pick up a barbarian. But it doesn't mean that you can win the competition in that arena. If you're not careful, you may lose your life. Since the beginning of the AS wrestling competition, the boss, who had been operating the business of selling AS parts, naturally knew more than Nami. The teams that could win in the AS wrestling competition were all strong and had a strong background supporting them. A girl like Nami, who was only hot-blooded and lucky enough to pick up a barbarian that was still in good condition, couldn't survive in that arena. No, I still have things to do. Moreover, it's something that must be done by winning this competition. Facing the boss's dissuasion, Nami was extremely unyielding and unmoved. But this unyielding attitude didn't last for more than 3 seconds. Under the boss's attitude of refusing to bargain, it instantly softened and turned into a pleading expression again. Just when the boss's annoyance was about to reach its limit, the doorbell suddenly rang. There's a guest. Nami, you stand aside for me. Don't hinder my business. Finally able to get rid of Nami's entanglement, the boss hurriedly walked to the door to welcome the guest. Little did he know that the moment the boss came to the door, he was stunned. Are you the boss here? I have something to ask you, is that okay? Gentle voice, amiable smile, noble and dignified temperament, and other words that could describe a beautiful woman constantly flashed through the boss's mind at this moment, making the boss who was good at business almost unable to react. Yes, I'm the boss here. Please, may I ask? The boss nodded his head repeatedly and revealed a brilliant smile. Even if the woman in front of him, who was emitting a noble temperament, didn't clearly state her purpose of coming, the boss wouldn't have any opinion about it. Because, as long as one wasn't blind, one would be able to see that the woman in front of him wasn't an ordinary person. If he could serve her today, no, even a month's worth of sales would be in his hands. Do you sell AS parts here? The noble girl with pink long hair looked around and pointed at the various parts that were neatly arranged on the display cabinet and asked. Yes, AS parts are the main goods that we sell in this shop. May I ask this, miss, is there anything that I can help you with? Hearing the girl in front of him take the initiative to ask about AS parts, the boss's smile became even more brilliant. Let me take a look first. The girl nodded her head and immediately turned her head and asked, Kai, what do you think? At this moment, the boss discovered that beside the girl stood a young man with an outstanding temperament, but faintly made the boss feel a trace of danger. Mo, could it be that he is an AS pilot? When the boss saw the young man, he immediately thought subconsciously, this place is okay. The young man nodded his head, gave a conservative evaluation, and walked towards the shop. Seeing this, the boss naturally followed suit. This time, the boss thought that he had already seen clearly. The real customer was probably that young man. And that noble young lady was probably in charge of paying the bill, right? Why the boss, who was muttering in his heart, was thinking about how to serve this pair of guests well. And This seems to be a muscle bundle? Suddenly, the young man pointed at the muscle bundle that was placed on the table, which was already half unwrapped, and asked, "Oh no." Seeing the muscle bundle, the boss immediately knew that something was wrong. Because he was in a hurry just now, and because of the arrival of the guests, the boss forgot to retract the muscle bundle, resulting in the young man seeing it. Yes, mister. This is the muscle bundle that the RK-91 Barbarian uses in its initial stage. This is the original muscle bundle produced by the factory. It is considered rare in the market now. The boss, who didn't change his expression, hurriedly walked to the side of the muscle bundle with a smile and explained to the guests. Original product? Haha. There are a lot of barbarians in this city. Boss, your business here seems to be booming. The young man raised his eyebrows and talked about the barbarians he saw on the street just now. Yes. Thanks to them, we can make a living here. The boss, who nodded and smiled apologetically, couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He didn't know why. This seemed to be just an ordinary business exchange, but it made the boss feel a little pressure. Wait. At this time, a voice unexpectedly sounded. This is what I ordered first. Sorry, it's not for sale. Nami. When he heard that voice, the boss suddenly became angry. Boss. This part, I want it. I'll give you half of the money first. After we win this game, I'll pay you the rest. How about that? Nami's eyes flashed with a determined light, but there was still a trace of pleading in the depths of her eyes. Nami, that's enough. Can you guarantee that you can win the next game? With that half-baked team of yours? The boss, who was worried about how to receive the guests, finally got angry after Nami's disturbance. Boss, I've put down the deposit for this part early in the morning. Now I just can't pay the price for the time being. Just now, when Nami was thinking about how to pay for the muscle bundle in the limited budget, she unexpectedly found that the young man seemed to be very interested in the muscle bundle. Needless to say, compared to him, who was cash-strapped, the boss would definitely choose to sell the muscle bundles to the couple who looked like they were rich. At that time, the Nami team, which was about to start the next AS wrestling competition, would fail miserably before they could even touch the competition ground because of the lack of spare parts. Therefore, in a hurry, Nami made up her mind and loudly announced the ownership of the muscle bundle. Kai. We seem to have embarrassed them. Looking at the two people who were in a dispute, the noble girl gently pulled the young man's clothes. Well, what a coincidence. The young man nodded slightly, with a wry smile at the corner of his mouth. He didn't expect that his impulsive inquiry would lead to a quarrel about the muscle bundle. UFFI. It seems that we have to apologize to them. Well, that's the only way. Otherwise, it's not good for anyone to continue arguing. Clap. Clap. Two claps interrupted the argument between the boss and Nami, which was getting more and more like a quarrel. Then, the young man took out a card from his pocket and handed it to the boss. Boss, I want this muscle bundle. Can I swipe my card here? Oh. Yes. You can swipe your card. Please wait a moment. The boss, who didn't react for a while, saw the credit card in the young man's hand. His eyes suddenly lit up, and he quickly opened the drawer, respectfully took the credit card from the young man, and prepared to pay the bill. Boss! How can you do this? Nami saw the boss actually resell the muscle bundle to the man and woman, and her voice suddenly became hoarse. Ahem. Miss, please don't be sad. If you can fulfill a wish for us, we will give you this muscle bundle as a return gift. The young man's words made Nami stunned. She, who had no chance with the muscle bundle, didn't expect that there would be such a thing. Then, Nami, who was afraid of missing out on the muscle bundle, quickly asked, I don't know what your wish is? Before she finished, Nami continued, I have to say in advance, I'm just an ordinary girl. There are not many things I can do. Nami's words made the noble girl shook her head slightly. With a gentle and moving smile on her mouth, she slowly said, "No. You misunderstood. We are just tourists who came to this city because of its fame. So, we only have one wish. That is to be able to enter the arena and watch the AS wrestling match up close." That's it. Nami couldn't believe her ears. For ordinary people, it may be difficult to enter the arena. But for this man and woman, who were obviously not ordinary people, it was nothing. Why did they have to find her? Nami's brain turned, but she couldn't think of a reason. In the end, in the face of the temptation of being able to get the muscle bundle for free and thus liberating her limited budget, Nami nodded and agreed to this condition. "Then, I'll leave the rest of the trip to you. Also, I'm Ray Minkai, and this is my girlfriend UFFI. I'm Nami, and I'm also an AS wrestling agent. You've found the right person this time. I'll make sure you can watch the AS wrestling match from the perfect seat." Chapter 417. Zhao. A man with only one word in his name. No one knew what his full name was, because he himself didn't know what his full name was. From the moment he was born, his name was only this word. Until the end of the civil war that took the lives of countless people 3 years ago, Zhao, who was like a wild dog, finally ushered in the opportunity to break free from the chains that had firmly trapped him at the bottom of society since he was a child. It was an inconspicuous piece of paper, but it represented a lot of money. It could even attract those rich people from all over the world. It was the ticket that brought Zhao Qi back from the dead. From a stray dog at the bottom of society, he became a respectable person in the eyes of many citizens. "Zhao, you're here again. How's your harvest today?" This was a dealer who sold arena tickets. When he saw the man who was still exuding a rough aura even though he was wearing an expensive suit, he waved his hand and shouted, "TSK, Baku, are you looking for a beating again?" Zhao spat out the toothpick in his mouth and glared at the other party as he shouted in a gruff voice. This fellow in front of him was originally Zhao's sworn enemy. If it weren't for this fellow's existence, Zhao would probably be able to monopolize the business of the arena's dealers. No, don't be like this, Zhao. Today, I have a big business to introduce to you." Faced with Zhao's threat, Baku shook his head and waved his hand. After indicating that he had no ill intentions, he walked to Zhao's side and lowered his voice. "Zhao, you know I've never had any thoughts of going against you. I'm just trying to make a living. Besides, I know where my abilities lie." However, these words that were close to begging for mercy were interrupted by Zhao's slap. "Baku, don't give me this nonsense. Speak. What do you want to do today?" Baku, who was slapped by Zhao, was not angry. Instead, he smiled embarrassedly. Don't, Boss Zhao. I know what you're capable of. So, I'll introduce you to the guests I met today." "Guests?" Zhao frowned slightly when he heard this, and a trace of distrust appeared on his face. "Yes, guest." Baku nodded repeatedly, his voice lowered even further, afraid that a third person would hear him. "Boss Zhao. That was a big fish. Although I really want to monopolize it, I don't know many AS wrestling teams." "AS wrestling team?" Upon hearing this name, Zhao's eyes lit up. Obviously, he had already guessed what Baku wanted to say next. In this city where AS wrestling dominated the mainstream entertainment, there were only 3 kinds of people who could inquire about the AS wrestling team. The first type was a delusional dreamer who wanted to invest all his fortune in an AS wrestling team in an attempt to soar into the sky. The second kind were speculators like him who wanted to use the fame of some famous AS wrestling teams to inflate the ticket prices in order to make huge profits. As for the last type, they would be extremely wealthy. They would want to spend countless amounts of money on the AS wrestling team and make them their own team so that they could profit from it. Therefore, the big fish referred to in Baku's words was undoubtedly the last one. Zhao, whose thoughts became clearer, looked up and down at Baku and slowly nodded. Speak. I'm listening. Yes, yes. Baku rubbed his hands. This was a small gesture unique to this guy when he was bargaining. 5,000. Zhao's expression did not change as he quoted a price. 20,000. Baku directly returned 4 times the price. 10,000. Zhao cut half of it without blinking. 9,000. Baku gritted his teeth. Obviously, he wanted to bite to death at this price. However, Zhao only raised his eyes slightly. 8,000. Goodbye if there's more. I'm busy. A trace of struggle appeared on Baku's face as he gritted his teeth. In the end, he nodded his head forcefully. Deal. Zhao reached into his bosom and took out a stack of banknotes. He threw it to Baku without looking at it. This is yours. Speak. Baku hurriedly caught the banknotes thrown by Zhao and pointed at the car not far away. Zhao glanced at it and left Baku behind. He walked to the side of the car and gently knocked on the windshield of the car. However, what Zhao did not expect was that as the windshield of the driver's seat fell, what appeared in front of him was a cold and elegant face that was like a flower on a mountain. Woman? What a beautiful woman! With this thought in mind, Zhao, who believed that his eyesight was better than others, judged that the woman in the driver's seat should be the daughter of a rich family's daughter who liked to play with exciting things. What a big fish! Needless to say, Zhao, who was used to such things in the arena, immediately began to calculate how much benefit he could obtain from this rich girl. Pop! While he was thinking, the scene of him throwing money at his face appeared once again. However, this time, it was Zhao himself who was thrown in the face by the money. In front of him was the colorful banknotes that filled the sky. His face was in pain from being slapped in the face by stacks of banknotes. What sounded in his ears was the cold and emotionless voice of a young girl. Take me to see the AS wrestling team in this city. If there is a team that you like, this money is yours. No nonsense. No questions. He straightforwardly stated his purpose. And the stacks of banknotes that were slapped in the face. All of this made Zhao throw away his unnecessary suspicions and wholeheartedly serve this, or rather, this pair of twin beauties who had identical faces, as customers. 2 distinguished guests, please follow me. I'll lead the way for you now. An hour later, Zhao, who was full of smiles, brought the twin ice beauties to a VIP room in the arena and pointed at the 2 teams that were fighting on the field. However, just when Zhao Man thought that with his outstanding eloquence, the twin ice sisters would definitely nod their heads and agree to the team he introduced, they were rejected by the Ice Mountain girl who should be the younger sister. No. Too weak. Alright. If this doesn't work, then the next one. Zhao, who felt that he was already well informed, did not mind and began to introduce the next team. In the end. No. Too weak. Then, please take a look at this team. They are an old team that has experienced close to 100 wrestling matches. Too weak. Then, please take a look at this team. Too weak. The ice-cold face and dull voice interrupted Zhao's bragging time and time again, almost causing Zhao to fall into the situation of a volcanic eruption. If not for the pain from being slapped by the stacks of banknotes still lingering on Zhao's face, Zhao might have turned hostile on the spot. Just take it as if it is for the sake of money. Zhao, who was secretly cheering himself on so that he could properly serve the twin ice beauties that were difficult to deal with, suddenly, his eyes lit up. 2 distinguished guests, quickly look. This is the most famous team in our arena. Their pilot's name is called Tao. Tao. Zhao, who was bragging, did not realize that when he announced the name of the team that was going to fight, the twin sisters who had been denying Zhao's bragging all along moved. Tao. Yufang, is that him? The person that Lord was talking about? The short-haired young girl asked in a low voice. I'm afraid that is him. The paint on the body and the characteristics are all the same as what Lord said. The long-haired young girl slowly nodded her head. Then, after taking a look at each other, the twins simultaneously looked at Zhao, who was still bragging. Although the twins' gaze did not have any killing intent, the coldness that was unable to dissipate caused Zhao to involuntarily shiver. Two distinguished guests, do you need anything? Zhao, who was afraid that his bragging would offend the twins, laughed mockingly. It is him. Tao, we won his team. It was still a straightforward method. Zhao's face was once again slapped by the stacks of banknotes until it hurt. However, at this moment, Zhao's heart was actually jumping for joy. Business done. What? Tao's team withdrew from this competition? At a corner of the arena, Nami's shocked voice that could not be concealed lingered above Neku for a long time. Nami, isn't this good? Although I don't know why Tao withdrew from the competition, at least our preparation time has been freed, right? The fat man with a red headscarf and a mustache spread out his hands, indicating that he was very happy with this sudden situation. Riley. Although that is what you said, but… Nami frowned. Alright, little boss. This time our luck is not bad. How about let's go have a drink to celebrate? The AS pilot, who was also Lick, could not stop talking about his favorite wine. Lick, you better stop for a moment. Right now I have an important announcement to make. Our team has welcomed a big financial backer. What? Once Nami's announcement was made, everyone was shocked. The team, which was already in a terrible fix due to the limited budget, suddenly welcomed a big financial backer? If this news were to be announced, most probably no one would believe it. Moreover, no matter how much Nami bragged about her team, there was no way to change the fact that her team was still in the middle level of the arena. You don't believe me? Then, I will introduce the big financial backer to you. Nami looked at her team members, who all revealed a distrustful expression, and immediately became excited. The next moment, the big financial backer, who had been waiting outside, and did not intend to disturb Nami's team, was invited in by Nami. Please look. This is Ray Minkai, and this is UFFI. They came to Nanche City today, and coincidentally met with me. During the conversation with me, they also nodded and acknowledged our strength, and proposed to provide us with funds. So, quickly come and meet our big financial backer. With someone as a witness, Nami was in the limelight in front of her team members. After the liveliness, the man and woman retreated to the other side, looking at the team members who were completely ignited with enthusiasm and started to work on the old barbarian. Kai, do you really intend to support this team? The girl's pretty face had a doubtful expression. Their purpose in coming to this southern city was not just to play, but to search for Amalgam's stronghold in this country and remove it, so as to prevent Mithril's stronghold in the South Pacific from being attacked. Yes, there is nothing wrong with this. Moreover, my goal is not this team, but her. The young man nodded slightly, raised his hand and pointed to Nami, who was concentrating on typing on the keyboard. According to my speculation, Nami may be one of Myra's members. Oh? Kai, do you want to take her back? Hearing the young man's idea, the girl did not seem to have any jealousy. Yes. Perhaps Nami's field of expertise is programming, and she may complement Mira. The young man, Ray Minkai, smiled and said his thoughts aloud. But we don't know if Nami will agree to help us. Kai, could it be that you're already confident? The girl frowned and looked at Nami, who was concentrating on her work. It was not difficult to see that Nami has devoted her mind to the barbarian system maintenance. Maybe I am a little bit sure. Ray Minkai carefully searched in his mind and remembered the memory of Nami. Lack of money. Want to rebuild the village. He even wants to rebuild the school that brought Nami beautiful memories in his memory. It was not difficult for Ray Minkai to come up with such an idea. As long as Ray Minkai told Mithril, the village and school would naturally be rebuilt in a short time. However, before the threat posed by Leonard and Amalgam was solved, these actions were meaningless. Even Nami's own life could not be guaranteed. Even if there was no possibility of Xiang Liang Sosuke and Nami having contact, Nami's identity as a whisperer was a time bomb that could explode at any time. Globally, more and more whisperers were discovered, and the result was an increase in the production of black technology products and the cheapness of them. Also, under the stimulation of the huge profits brought by black technology products, capital, organizations, and even countries would crazily pursue the existence of whisperers around the world. Therefore, Nami's situation would become more and more serious and dangerous, although it seemed a bit shameless to say this. But finding a way to bring Nami back to Avalon was indeed a good way to keep Nami away from the vortex of whisperers. Money. Sitting on the throne, the girl who had been in power for a long time thought carefully and immediately thought of Rei Minkai's idea. Indeed, from the first time she saw Nami, this little girl had always been competing with money. She constantly used all kinds of methods to get everything she wanted. She wanted to use the limited budget she could control to obtain greater benefit. In other words, Nami might be a money grubber. The best way to deal with a money grubber was undoubtedly one word: money. For this, the girl, the Empress of the Britannia Empire, Euphemia Li Britannia, did not seem to be lacking in this regard. Chapter 4:18. Although money wasn't omnipotent. However, in the face of a tycoon who didn't ask for any reason and would grant any request without hesitation, most people would subconsciously comply with the tycoon's request and serve him, thereby obtaining more and better benefits. In this city, the fame of the pair of extravagant twin beauties who appeared in the AS arena in Nan-su during the day had already spread to the ears of most of the interested people when the night fell. Among these people, there were some who lamented their bad luck. They actually didn't meet a rich girl who was not only rich but also a beauty. Some were jealous that the usually arrogant and tyrannical Tao had such good luck to be chosen by a rich girl at first glance. If they continued to follow the news they received, they might even reach the sky in a single step and become the other half of the rich girl. Of course, in these sighs and jealous voices, there was another voice. It was the voice that managed the order of the city in the underground world. Although it was small, no one dared to resist. The most prominent symbol of this was the invitation card that was respectfully delivered to the room where the twin beauties were staying. Yufeng. They are tempted. The short-haired girl, Xia Yulan, checked the room several times and confirmed that there was no listening device installed, then pointed at the red invitation on the table and said, "Well, of course. In the face of a seemingly weak but extravagant rich girl, I believe that those people will also be moved." The long-haired girl took off the coat draped over her body and calmly said. Moreover, the long-haired girl, Xia Yufeng, who was the older sister of the twins, didn't mention one thing. The current role of the twins was a rich girl from a certain country who came to this city in search of excitement. For this reason, Lei Minkai had prepared a sky-high amount of funds for the Gemini twins, allowing them to squander as much as they want without any misgivings. This was all to lure out the amalgam forces hidden in the underground of Nanche City. At this critical juncture of the final battle, whether it was mithril or amalgam, they wouldn't turn a blind eye to the role of the twins as a walking treasury. Although the methods of both sides might be somewhat unorthodox, the fundamental purpose was to draw more resources under their banner, to make more preparations for the final battle, and to better prepare for the final victory. Rei Minkai, who was well aware of this, used this knowledge to enter this AS esports city that could bring huge profits to amalgam. Ming Qi was naturally Rei Minkai. The hidden chess piece was Gemini, who was a former member of the amalgam and knew them well. It had to be said that as a former member of the amalgam, Gemini's actions were accurate and efficient. In just half a day, the identity of the tycoons played by Gemini had already spread throughout the upper echelons of Nance City, and even the underground world. 8 o'clock in the evening 3 days later? Isn't it a little late? Xia Yulan casually fiddled with the invitation a few times. After confirming that there were no tricks on it, she opened it and gave it a few glances. We still have to make preparations. Otherwise, how could they have set up a trap for us? Xia Yufang glanced at the invitation card in Xia Yulan's hand and shook her head slightly. This was just a trick to keep people in suspense. While revealing their identity on the invitation card, they would also use some specious words to arouse the target's interest, making the target interested in the scenes and activities they described. Finally, after successfully arousing the target's emotions, they would add a time limit that was neither too long nor too short, making the target suffer in the long wait. This was just a common method used by the underground world. Although it was old-fashioned, it could successfully arouse a lot of self-righteous, naive, and rich people. Ring, ring, ring. At this time, the doorbell rang. Xia Yulan's hands shook and threw the invitation card on the table. At the same time, a sharp dagger was caught in her hand. Yulan. Xia Yufang softly called out, indicating that her sister did not need to be nervous. She stepped forward and walked towards the door. Esteemed guests, good evening. This is a special dinner prepared by our hotel for our 2 guests. Outside the door, there were 2 attendants in neat uniforms. They respectfully pushed the dining cart in front of the door. Put it here. You can leave. Xia Yufang did not let the attendants push the dining cart into the room. Instead, after they left, she carefully pulled the dining cart into the room. Still the same trick to keep people in suspense. Yulan, we'll do it the same way tonight. After carefully inspecting the dining cart, to make sure there were no listening devices or dangers, Xia Yufang threw the dining cart aside. She had no intention of touching the dinner placed on the dining cart. Xia Yulan was the same. Especially when she heard that Xia Yufang wanted to use the same method to prepare dinner, she quickly took out a few energy bars from her small bag. This was the Gemini's dinner. For them, portable emergency food like energy bars were already on their menu. Moreover, it was the kind that was common. If ordinary people were to choose, perhaps they would choose the delicacies on the dining cart that Xia Yufang had tossed aside. But to the twins, those delicacies were far less safe than the energy bars that they carried with them. Time continued to move forward. In the following 3 days, the Geminis played their roles perfectly, constantly using a huge amount of money to buy resources for the team they had chosen, carrying out modifications to the Mecha. In the eyes of the bystanders, this was the behavior of a nouveau riche, which attracted the attention of the entire Nance city. Even the most ignorant and inexperienced person would have heard of the earthquake caused by this pair of nouveau riche twins. Huh? What? It's just that the big boss took a fancy to them. Is there a need to be so arrogant? Nami, who had not been immersed in the joy of finally finding a big boss for a few days, muttered in a bad mood. Why, Nami, did you encounter any difficulties? Although Nami's muttering was soft, it was still heard by Ray Minkai and Euphemia, who had just returned. Ah, nothing. You're back, Master Ray Minkai and Miss UFFI. When Nami saw Ray Minkai and Euphemia asked about her muttering, she immediately waved her hand, indicating that it was nothing. Ray Minkai naturally understood Nami's thoughts, but the topic of the Gemini had already reached a white-hot point in Nanche City. Even if Ray Minkai did not use special channels to understand the Gemini's movements, he could still hear the news about the Gemini's movements on the street. For example, the Gemini left the hotel at what time, where they were going, and what they were going to buy were all over the place. Well, it could be said like this. In just 3 days, the appearance of the Gemini made the dealers in Nanche City earn a lot of money. Nami, are you talking about the twins? I heard you mention Tao before. It seems that they took a fancy to him. Euphemia was well aware of this, but she still put on a doubtful attitude. When Tao was mentioned, Nami's chatterbox was opened. Yes, Miss UFFI. Do you know? That Tao just swaggered here, pointed at our AS and belittled them, saying this is not good, That is not good. It's really infuriating. Nami complained to Euphemia. Listening to Nami's words, Rei Minkai secretly nodded. Whether it was the rumors in Nanshe City, or Tao's performance, the Gemini acted according to the original plan, and the effect they achieved was not ordinary. It seems that there should be a result tonight. Euphemia quietly listened to Nami's complaints with a smile on her face, and when Nami said that she was tired, she casually mentioned, "Nami, do you want to be like that Tao? To be recruited by a bigger investor?" Nami was stunned, then shook her head again and again. "No, I don't mean that, Miss UFFI." Then, Nami thought for a moment and continued, "Although I envy that hateful guy Tao for being able to get the favor of a big investor, I know that there is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. The reason why Tao was chosen by a big investor, I'm afraid there are some reasons that I don't know." At this point, Nami's eyebrows were deeply wrinkled, as if she was organizing her words. But after struggling for a while, Nami finally could not find the words to express her thoughts. "Forget it. Don't worry about this problem. Now let's get to work." Nami yelled and threw all the complicated questions to the back of her mind. She immediately began to prepare the AS Barbarian with her team members. It seems that the time is not ripe yet. Looking at Nami, who was once again immersed in her work, Euphemia sighed slightly. If Nami showed a trace of envy, or even jealousy, Euphemia could take the opportunity to recruit Nami with 10 times better conditions than the Geminis offer. There are still many opportunities, but I'm afraid it won't be peaceful tonight. Rei Minkai and Euphemia still had to stay in the city for a while. Even if tonight's operation was successful, it would still take some time to clean up the remaining amalgam members in the city. Therefore, Rei Minkai was not in a hurry to recruit Nami. "Yes, Kai. You're not worried about Xia Yufang and the others acting alone?" Euphemia suddenly asked. "Yes. Don't worry. Why would I worry? UFFI, don't forget, the twins still haven't given up on killing me to avenge their teacher." Rei Minkai was not worried about the Gemini's ability. If they couldn't even complete this mission alone, then the Gemini would have wasted 9 dragons training. However, Euphemia was very worried about the Gemini's insistence on killing Rei Minkai. "Kai, if that's the case, why do you still keep the twins by your side? Is there a need to ask?" "It's definitely because Kai is obsessed with them." Suddenly, White Cat State Zero, who had been quietly lying in Euphemia's arms, suddenly mocked Rei Minkai when there was no one around. "No. I just feel that you need some people by your side, UFFI." Rei Minkai was very magnanimous towards the White Cat State Zero's mockery. "Although they still want to kill me, at least they won't target anyone other than me. In addition, based on the current situation, Xia Yufang and Xia Yulan can still be used. Before I'm killed by them, they will keep their promise and act as my lackeys until one of us dies." Euphemia was silent for a while and finally nodded. Night gradually fell. The time indicated on the invitation had finally arrived. The Gemini, who had changed into a luxurious outfit, stepped onto the limousine parked at the entrance of the hotel under the guidance of the attendant. In addition, there was a bulletproof limousine in front and behind to escort the Gemini. Although they had not seen the person in charge, this arrangement was already in place. In the limousine, the Gemini did not speak. They knew that from the moment they got into the limousine, their every move had been monitored by the other party. Perhaps the only thing that could be communicated was the Gemini's tacit understanding and the telepathy between the twins. TSK. They can really keep their composure. In a forest in the suburbs, a fat, bald man in uniform cursed unhappily. He had already heard of the reputation of the Gemini beauties. However, due to certain reasons, he was not able to make a move immediately and was forced to wait until everything was settled before he had the time to pay attention to the news of the Gemini beauties. This was also the source of the invitation. Looking at the two identical and incomparably cold faces on the screen, the fatty's mind could not help but become active. One must know that in this city, he was the only one who had the authority. Previously, the representative of Amalgam was transferred back for certain reasons, thus giving the fatty the opportunity to obtain the management rights of the entire city. What a beautiful gift! I can use it as a gift to completely control this city. The more he looked at the two identical faces on the screen, the more active and impatient the fatty's mind became. He could not wait to see the Gemini beauties immediately. Men, pass down the order. The plan has changed. Tell the brothers to work harder. Don't let me lose face in front of the guests. Gradually, the impatient fatty changed his original plan of trapping the Gemini beauties, and changed it to a plan of performing in front of the real VIP guests. Yes, sir. Looks like tonight will be a beautiful night. The fatty's gaze moved away from the screen and looked at the floor-to-ceiling glass not far away. On the horizon not far away, a light that represented the fleet quietly lit up. Chapter 419. Steel scraps were strewn all over the place, and countless bullet casings were mixed among them. It was extremely eye-catching, and anyone who was in this battlefield in the jungle could feel the pressure of death coming at them. There were also dark brown stains on the scarred steel wreckage. This was the color that would only appear after the blood had dried up. However, these scenes filled with the aura of death could not stop Tao. Instead, it made his nerves enter a state of excitement. Too satisfying. Too amazing. Because of the Gemini, as the team hired by the Gemini, the team led by Tao undoubtedly participated in this battle for the VIP. It was a battle with no restrictions and full of live ammunition. No one knew Tao's true identity. Perhaps more people were aware of Tao's active figure in the AS wrestling competition, as well as the unforgettable scenes brought about by the AS that he named Ogre. But in fact, Tao's true identity was an AS pilot who left the army. At the same time, he was also a part of the civil war that caused Nami to lose her village 3 years ago. Therefore, after coming into contact with the smoke and dazzling bloodstains again, Tao finally recalled the days when he was fighting on the battlefield instead of fighting in the arena like a normal player. Hey! It's all thanks to the big boss. But this battle is still interesting. The gunshots that tore through the night sky echoed in his ears, and the familiar yet unfamiliar airframes in front of him. Tao's current mission was to kill all the enemies in front of him, and when they fell, listen to the communication from behind. Ogre, kill Bat! An impassioned male voice rang in the luxuriously decorated hall, and in the midst of his voice, men and women in suits sitting in the hall all looked at the screen and locked their cameras on Ogre. 2 guests. From the current battle, Ogre under the guest's name has already obtained a record of 3 kills. In this case, we can accept a new round of additions. May I know what the guest thinks? On the side of the hall, a pair of beautiful twins that made all the men in the hall subconsciously look at them were quietly watching Tao's movements. Add more. According to the upper limit. Without hesitation, the long-haired girl in a red dress nodded slightly and directly ordered. Yes, follow your orders. Now we will begin to adjust according to the new upper limit. Well then, I wish you a pleasant evening. The departure of the attendants meant that this pair of twins, who were destined to be the most eye-catching of the night, had obtained an irresistible amount of benefits from this battle. Ha ha! Sitting in the monitoring room, Fatty clenched his fists tightly, and a struggling expression appeared on his face. It was too fast. It was too fast. He didn't expect that the Gemini pair would continue to fight after the start of the battle. In less than half an hour, this pair of Gemini had added more points than everyone else in the room. Are they here to cause trouble? The moment this question appeared, it was shattered by the scene in front of him. Gemini only moved her body slightly under the camera lens, but Fatty's eyes were already glued to her. In the next second, Fatty, who had dispelled all his doubts and worries, gave the order. Men, that guy had made a move. I've spent so much money to raise him, now is the time. In the hall, no one knew what Fatty's order was. They only knew that the battle under the camera lens was getting more and more intense. There were originally at least 10 AS on the battlefield, but now there were only 4 left, including Tao's ogre. It seemed that it was time to decide the final winner and put an end to tonight's battle. Yufeng. There's movement. Xia Yulan was keenly aware of the changes in the gazes of the people around the hall. This was not a good sign, because Xia Yulan felt that these changes in gazes appeared when they were looking at her. They're about to make a move. Xia Yufeng nodded slightly, but her expression did not change at all. She was still as calm as before, and her face was almost like an iceberg. Wow! What's that? A new contestant? Suddenly, the image changed, and an AS mech that made the Gemini frown appeared on the screen. King of Hell? How could it appear so easily? Gemini was very familiar with the King of Hell. But what Gemini did not expect was that the King of Hell, who was supposed to be the Overseer, would actually appear in this battle between modified AS. What a disgusting way of doing things! Xia Yufeng uttered coldly. Beside him, Xia Yulan's expression turned even colder. The appearance of this battle was not unexpected to Gemini. On the contrary, it was inevitable in their plan. But the only thing that surprised Gemini was that the King of Hell actually appeared to resolve the battle. Since when did Amalgam become so stupid? Gemini looked at each other, but they could not come to any conclusion. After all, in their previous lives, other than 9 dragons, those who appeared by their side were either crazy or extremely powerful people. As for the stupid ones, most of them appeared on the opposite side of Gemini, and many of them were personally dealt with by Gemini. Follow the original plan, we'll take it one step at a time. Gemini's heart was in sync, and they immediately set the tone for the next action. As for Tao, it was a pity. He was mercilessly abandoned by Gemini. He was just like a tool that was thrown away after being used. Therefore, his outcome was that he was mercilessly killed by the King of Hell's Lambda drive system while he was madly attacking the King of Hell. Until the end, Tao was still struggling for his beautiful dream. How is this possible? There is actually such a thing in this world. Ah! Boom! In the midst of Tao's screams, the symbol representing Gemini on the screen lost its brilliance and became extremely dim. And in the light caused by the explosion of the ogre, Gemini was suddenly surrounded by several burly men. And in front of these men, the attendant who had repeatedly asked Gemini if they wanted to add more people was standing there respectfully. He bowed slightly towards Gemini in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Honorable guests, please pay the chips that you should pay. Xia Yufeng's gaze was calm as usual, and she was not shocked by the imposing burly men. What if I say no? Hearing this, the attendant's pupils, which were covered by his fringe, flashed with a trace of unbearable light. Then, I'm sorry. We have to compensate for the losses that we suffered. Take them away. The burly men surrounding Gemini immediately stepped forward, wanting to make a move on Gemini. Move aside. I can walk by myself. Xia Yulan shouted out harshly, forcefully stopping the footsteps of the men. Not knowing why, Gemini, who was originally exceptionally beautiful in the attendant's eyes, seemed to have changed into a different person, and became extremely dangerous. No. It's just a final struggle. The attendant had already seen this kind of action many times. In the end, without exception, they all became wandering ghosts in the forest outside. Glancing at Gemini's expression without leaving a trace, the attendant rejected his own thoughts. Soon after, he raised his hand and said, 2 guests, please come with us. At least, we won't embarrass you like this. Yulan. Let's go. Xia Yufeng glanced at the attendant and calmly nodded, as if she was not affected by the burly men around her. Just like that, The attendant who was leading the men to threaten the twins couldn't help but sigh inwardly. This was not what he wanted, but there was no other way. Here, no one could go against the fatty's orders. And the other people in the hall coldly watched everything that happened. Whether it was Tao's outstanding performance that made them lose their bargaining chip, or Gemini being threatened, in their eyes, it was just a good show. Until Gemini was taken away, the entire hall was filled with discussions about the shocking appearance of the King of Hell. To these people, there was nothing more shocking than the King of Hell's powerful battle strength. Thus, what kind of fate would Gemini encounter? They did not care at all. And as the person involved, they did not show any signs of caring about what kind of fate they would encounter. In the attendants' eyes, Xia Yufang and Xia Yulan, the twins quietly followed them to the room that had already been arranged, and obediently and calmly accepted the arrangement, waiting for the moment when their fate would arrive. Why are they so quiet? Why are they so obedient? The attendant did not understand why Gemini, who was willing to throw away a lot of money for victory, would be so quiet at this moment. In the attendant's impression, people who were willing to throw away a lot of money would not be willing to accept defeat. Why? The attendant's question might not be answered. Because, after he led Gemini into the room, he was half threatened and half escorted out of the building by the burly men, and he was allowed to leave on his own. It was only later, when the attendant recalled this matter, that he truly realized what had happened. He had once wandered around in front of the gate of death. If not for the fatty's mind being confused by Gemini, when he left the building, he would have been dealt with on the grounds of confidentiality. Of course, this was a matter for later. Furthermore, even if someone remembered that there was an attendant who helped the tyrant, they would not pursue this matter. Because, as the mastermind behind the scenes, a certain fatty had long, "Good evening, two beautiful ladies." Under the escort of the burly men, the impatient fatty finally welcomed the moment that he had been waiting for. The moment he hugged Gemini into his embrace. "Who are you?" The one who asked was still Xia Yufang. "Me?" He. After being asked about his identity, the fatty laughed complacently. "Beautiful ladies. I am the true master of this city. Here, I am omnipotent. In fact, I can even completely erase all the losses that you have suffered." "You sure talk big. What do you want?" Xia Yufang's calmness made the fatty frown slightly. Not knowing why, the fatty suddenly felt that Gemini seemed to have unknowingly seized the initiative. "Me? What do I want? Beautiful ladies. Trust me. What I want is a win-win situation for both sides. But before that, I need the two beautiful ladies to pay a small price." "Price? You just want us sisters to become your playthings." What made the fatty surprised was that the other young lady who had been silent all this time actually saw through his thoughts. Moreover, under the gaze of the burly men around her, she walked step by step to the fatty's side and gently and charmingly placed her hand on his shoulder. "You." The fatty, who had his thoughts mercilessly seen through by the young lady, subconsciously tried to defend himself, but in the next moment, he logically admitted his thoughts. Because the young lady who took the initiative to walk forward seemed to be too enthusiastic. So enthusiastic that the fatty even thought that this was a trap set by the young lady to throw herself into his arms. In fact, it was indeed so. What the young lady set up was indeed a trap, but it was not a throw herself into his arms, it was a trap set by the Grim Reaper. "Don't move." Just as the burly men roared, an afterimage quickly swept past the fatty's side. In a few ups and downs, blood-red flowers bloomed one after another. Only until the sound of the burly man's body falling to the ground reached the fatty's ears, did the fatty discover that a dagger flickering with cold light was actually placed on his neck. And the owner of this dagger was precisely the young lady who took the initiative to throw herself into his arms. "You? Who exactly are you people?" The coldness that came from his neck caused the fatty's entire body to stiffen up, making him unable to move at all. "Where is the person in charge here?" Xia Yulan, who placed the dagger on the fatty's neck, did not pay attention to the fatty's question and asked her own question with a cold voice. Moss. I am the person in charge here. The fatty's forehead was full of cold sweat. You! Xia Yufang, who easily put down all the burly men, sneered, not believing the fatty's words. What I said is true. After Krama left, I was entrusted to be the person in charge of managing this city. The instant the cold dagger pierced through his neck, the fatty actually smoothly said the reason. As it turned out, when Gemini came to this city, the person in charge of Amalgam who was stationed in this city was urgently recalled. Thus, the fatty who was temporarily appointed became the true owner of this city. When there is no tiger in the mountain, the monkey can also proclaim itself as king? Xia Yulan slightly raised the dagger, forcing the fatty to continuously retreat. In the end, the fatty was forced to the foot of the wall, and looked at Xia Yulan with his forehead full of sweat, repeatedly begging for mercy. Did that lord say those words? Yulan, he is already useless. Krama, who is in charge of this city, is already gone. Then, he is useless. Xia Yufang lowered her head and glanced at the burly man who was put down by her, and coldly said those words that made the fatty unceasingly beg for mercy. The fatty's begging was useless. Perhaps it could be said that when he treated Gemini as Chapter 420. Half a paragraph was left out at the end of yesterday's chapter. This was a mistake that shouldn't have happened. While Wheel was deeply reflecting on himself, he also made some changes. I'm very sorry. The sharp dagger was dripping with a captivating red liquid. With a flick of Xia Yulan's wrist, the captivating red liquid flew out of the dagger and fell to the ground, drawing a glaring scar in front of the fatty's lifeless face. Mithril's people will arrive in 3 minutes. Xia Yufang turned a blind eye to Xia Yulan's action of playing with the dagger and just calmly said the next move. What about the King of Hell? That should be the biggest threat. Xia Yulan turned her head and glanced at the dark forest outside. Let Mithril handle it, since that lord has already told them the secret of the Lambda drive system. Then, the existence of the King of Hell should be left to them. Although the appearance of the King of Hell was beyond Xia Yufang's expectations, Xia Yufang never regarded it as a goal. I'll listen to you. Xia Yulan expressed no doubt about the arrangement of the King of Hell. However, she added another sentence after that. Then, what about Krama? Although this fatty said that Krama has already left here, but go and look for him. Although there won't be any result. Xia Yufang was familiar with the amalgam, but she didn't have the confidence to find traces of Krama here. This was just a response prepared to deal with Mithril's possible inquiry. Boom! At this moment, an explosion ignited the dark forest outside the window. He's here. Xia Yulan's eyes flashed and looked out of the window. Your Highnesses, my lovely princesses, your Knight Kurlutz is here. Sure enough, it was Mithril's as. The first to appear was Kurlutz, who had long-range sniping skills. With the increase in combat power brought by the simple mass production of the Lambda Drive M9 based on the strong crossbow technology, Kurlutz easily seized control of the battle and caught the King of Hell off guard, causing the King of Hell to retreat repeatedly. Moreover, the sudden change in the field made the people who were still pointing at the King of Hell turn pale with fright. But soon, these people thought it was another special performance and fell into a carnival again. TSK. These people really don't know what's good for them. Zongjie. Pay attention to the safety of the audience. Although we are very unhappy with their existence, at least on the international level, these people still have some influence. On the other side, when Melissa's Lambda Drive M9 rushed out of the shadows of the forest, she didn't forget to give an order to Sagara Sosuke, who was rushing over from the other side. Understood. Begin protecting the target. Knowing the dangers of the Lambda Drive system, Sosuke Xiangliang immediately rushed to the front of the observation deck and prepared to deal with any accident. You sure came quickly. Yufeng, there's nothing for us to do here. Xia Yulan retracted her gaze from the Lambda Drive M9 and said to Xia Yufeng, Yes. 3 against 1. His opponent was the King of Hell. If this had happened in a world line that had not changed, the Mithril M9 would have been defeated. However, in today's world that had changed, Mithril's main force, the M9, had also been reborn. Due to the influence of Ray Minkai and Avalon, Mithril quickly determined the application and mass production standards of the Lambda Drive system. Now that they had lost the crossbow, the M9 with a large number of equipment had become a transitional body for the new Lambda Drive system. Therefore, Kurlutz, who had mastered the Lambda Drive system, easily completed the task of suppressing the King of Hell. He even vaguely made an attack that could kill the target almost without the help of others. The light of the Lambda Drive system continued to reverberate in the air. However, the Lambda Drive M9 driven by Kurlutz shot out the sniper cannon's bullets one by one, creating waves of impact, forcing the King of Hell to grit his teeth and persevere, knowing that he would fall into the trap of the onlookers. Well done, Kurlutz. There will be a reward when we go back. Melissa licked her lips and unceremoniously drove her M9 equipped with a longsword. Then, she took a big stride forward, and the Lambda Drive M9 suddenly slashed out a cold light. Gotcha! The sound of metal being cut by brute force rang out as the blade cut into the King of Hell's waist. In just a short moment, the Lambda Drive M9 driven by Melissa had already cut the King of Hell's blade in half. Boom! The heavy sound of the King of Hell crashing to the ground, and the raised dust became the signal of this short battle, and also the first victory of the Lambda Drive M9. Mission completed. Now, let's start screening the audience. Understood. Melissa, pay attention to the spies mixed in with the guests. After Melissa reported the completion of the mission, Teresa's voice followed closely behind. Understood. Then, Sir Colonel, the twins are not on our side right now. They seem to have gone to investigate other information. Melissa looked left and right, but she could not see any trace of the twins coming to meet. I know. They should have their own missions. Let her be. Teresa knew the importance of the twins, but if Ray Minkai did not speak for a day, Teresa, and even the Mithril behind her, were quite passive. In any case, the twins were not only captives, but also important combat power on Avalon. Under such circumstances, Mithril could not take any action against the twins. Understood. At this time, the twins were quickly rushing to the room where there might be a secret room. With the twins' quick actions, the stacks of books and piles of secret information were turned over, and with the twins' efforts, they were divided into several piles, waiting for the arrival of reinforcements. The twins' search was extremely fast, and they soon came to a room deep in the building. Krama is really not here. Xia Yulan looked around and really did not find any trace of Krama. Of course. Xia Yufeng nodded and then pressed the button to open the door. The twins' operation was very successful. Even the performance of Melissa and the other two who used the Lambda Drive system for the first time satisfied Mallory, who was full of expectations for this operation. During this period of competition, Mithril finally grasped the power of the Lambda Drive system. This gave Mallory a lot of hope for the upcoming final battle. Xia Yufeng, Xia Yulan, and the others have succeeded? Very well done. Ray Minkai stood on the balcony, looking at the AS arena from afar, and smiled. Captain Knight, since the twins' operation is successful, then there is no need for Her Majesty to stay there, right? On the other side of the communication channel, Fianna could not feel at ease about Euphemia's safety. Even though she knew that under the protection of the White Cat State Zero, there were not many people in the world who could threaten Euphemia's safety. Yes, we can go back soon. But before that, there are some things to take care of. In order to reassure the loyal and responsible captain of the guards, Rei Minkai explained the next plan of action. The amalgam stronghold in this city was jointly removed by the twins and Mithril, so the only thing left to do was to recruit Nami. This matter was not difficult, but it was also difficult. Before ensuring the success of the recruitment, Rei Minkai still needed to do something. For example, to muddy the waters of the AS wrestling competition. What? Suspend the competition? Early in the morning, Nami, who did not know anything about the battle that happened in the suburbs and even affected the wrestling competition, finally found a clue. There was no other reason. When Nami rushed to the arena early in the morning, she was blocked by the sign hanging high, which said that the competition was suspended. Nami, who did not know what was going on, asked around and came back, and became a little irritated. Until all her team members arrived, the irritability on Nami's face became even more obvious. What happened? At this time, Rei Minkai and Euphemia also came over. Master Lei, I'm afraid we have to let you down. As soon as she saw Rei Minkai and Euphemia, Nami forced herself to be spirited, gently pushed away her teammates, and came in front of Rei Minkai and Euphemia, and said apologetically. Euphemia looked around and asked softly, "What's going on? Why are the others waiting outside the gate?" "I don't know the reason. Now the AS wrestling competition is suspended. It seems that it will not be able to start for a while." Nami shook her head helplessly and said what she heard. Suspended? What a pity. Euphemia's face showed a regretful look, which made Nami suddenly embarrassed. Since Rei Minkai and Euphemia began to sponsor Nami's team did not get good results, and they did not even play a game. From the beginning to the end, it was only Rei Minkai and Euphemia who took the money, bought the parts, and prepared the equipment. Sorry. This is not what I hoped for. I will find a way to pay off the debt of the two masters. Nami, who wanted to rely on the AS wrestling competition to get a lot of money to rebuild the village and school, struggled in her heart, but in the end, she accepted the cruel fact in front of her. From the news she just received, it seemed that for some unknown reason, the AS wrestling competition would not be held for at least a year. Nami could not say such news. In the end, Nami gritted her teeth and decided to return Rei Minkai and Euphemia's sponsorship, and then find a way to make up the difference. Pay it off. Euphemia looked at Nami in surprise. She did not expect Nami to do this, and, looking at her, it seemed that she was serious. Ahem. Under Euphemia's gaze, Rei Minkai coughed to attract Nami's attention. Nami. In fact, you can use our sponsorship as much as you want. You don't need to pay it back. Just treat it as we provide you with money for free. Rei Minkai's words suddenly made Nami, who had a strong self-esteem, angry. No. Master Lei. I said I will pay it back, and I will pay it back. In the beginning, I believed that you had taken a liking to our strength, which was why you sponsored us. Therefore, under the principle that investment must be profitable, this investment has been regarded as a failure, and it is my responsibility. Therefore, I must take responsibility. Nami's theory made Rei Minkai and Euphemia silent. To be honest, Rei Minkai and Euphemia came for Nami from the beginning. Kai, maybe this is an opportunity. Euphemia softly reminded. But this is a bit unreasonable. Rei Minkai sighed. In the end, he still chose his initial plan. Nami. You don't need to pay back our sponsorship, but if you are dissatisfied with this, then maybe we can deal with it in another way. Rei Minkai first denied Nami's decision to pay back the sponsorship, and then gave another option. What way? Nami, who insisted on paying back the sponsorship, immediately asked when she heard Rei Minkai's second option. Obviously, Nami also knew that she could not pay back the sponsorship in a short period of time. Work in lieu of salary. Nami, although you don't realize it, in my opinion, your programming ability is very good. Therefore, we are interested in your programming ability. Lei Minkai raised his hand and pointed at the military notebook in Nami's arms, telling her his decision. Would you like to work for us? Work? Nami was stunned. She did not think of this possibility. Nami, who did not receive a comprehensive education, did not know how terrible her programming ability was, and she did not know that she was a rare whisperer in the world. What she knew was that her programming ability seemed to have appeared out of thin air and suddenly appeared in her mind. Is this it? Thinking of this, Nami held the military notebook in her arms. Yes, this is it. Lei Minkai nodded and then took out a check that had already been written. Nami, if you agree, this is your first month's salary. Nami, who was somewhat confused by Lei Minkai's sudden solicitation, took the check and was suddenly stunned. This, Nami was frightened by the series of zeros on the check. She stared at the check incoherently, for fear that the check in her hand would fly away in the next second. It's true, Nami. Nami. Seeing Nami's expression, Euphemia knew that she had succeeded. Really? I can only do this, and I can get this salary? It's true. If you don't believe it, you can go to the bank. But I don't think the bank here has so much cash for you to withdraw. Lei Minkai nodded slightly. Nami. Say yes. After a brief moment of absent-mindedness, Riley began to urge Nami to nod. As an experienced person, Riley was naturally very clear about the importance of opportunities. Now that Nami's destiny had diverged, Riley did not hesitate to help Nami make a decision. Nami's hands were trembling. This was not fear. This was excitement. It was also the expression of being too excited to control herself. Nami knew that with this money, she would not have to worry about the suspension of the AS wrestling tournament, and she could even start the revival plan of her hometown immediately. Thoughts flashed in her mind, and Nami, who was struggling, finally nodded. I accept. So, where is my position? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.